TWSB. Chapter 31. The last and only, 3, a mage. Excuse me, is anybody in there? I heard an unknown woman's voice outside. It was hard to tell by the voice alone, but it sounded like someone older. I calmly took a breath before releasing my holy domain again. The large golden circle quickly appeared and spread to the outside of the confessional. I could see Seti's young face much better thanks to the light. Yes, I am inside. I am not taking confessions right now. May I ask what brings you here? I calmly responded. The imperial palace was somewhere people could not enter without proper identification and reason. This was especially true about the temple at the imperial palace, which was guarded by elite knights. I didn't have a reason to be wary about someone whose identity should have been confirmed twice before coming here. However, I came to confess. Ah, I now see the plaque that says you are not here. I did not notice it. Please forgive me. I couldn't tell whether this person really didn't know or if she was making an excuse. The woman's tone sounded serious but still light. She seemed to let go of the doorknob after confirming that someone was inside, but I turned toward Seti without removing my hand from the door. The little kid's gaze was still sharp. That is okay. I guess the plaque was too small that you must not have seen it. But did you just use magic in the temple, madam? Oh. My tone was a bit accusatory at the end and I could hear the woman mumbling, "Oh my goodness," to herself. According to the second chapter of Less Than, the rules and beliefs of the Church of the Almighty God Greater Than, magic was not to be used inside temples as a way to show respect towards the Almighty God. It was an old custom that most mages do not abide by in modern times, but it was still a rule. Please forgive me for that as well, it was unintentional. It is rare for me to move about without using magic. Please forgive me, Prince Jesse. So, she does know that I am the one in here. I quietly sighed. I will forgive you, madam. But please keep that in mind from now on. Yes, Your Highness. Thank you very much. Then I will sit here and wait. You are going to wait. You seem to be on a break, so I will wait until you come outside to confess, Your Highness. I guess she is really here to confess. Click, click. I heard her footsteps for the first time. I guess there were no footsteps earlier because she used magic. I heard the sounds of clothes crumpling, making me believe that the woman sat down somewhere. I let go of the door handle and turned toward Seti. The boy's eyes were full of contempt. Seti, leave for today. I whispered to him. You can't be seen by that person. Come to my room if you need help again. Proceed like this. What? I'm sure you don't need to do the sacrament inside the confessional. Well, that is true, but... The little kid was saying something quite daring. He wanted me to have that woman sit outside while he and I hid inside the confessional and receive her confession. You can't eavesdrop on someone else's confession. That's supposed to be confidential. I quietly scolded him. I then remembered how that damn imperial prince bastard was standing next to us when I listened to Lady Sarnez's confession at the spring ball. It let me know who Seti took after to act like this. Sarah Belliard doesn't deserve such consideration. The boy sharply whispered back. I blanked out for a moment. Who did he say that person is? To be honest with you, I don't have anything to confess, Your Highness. I just needed somewhere to vent. The woman's voice echoed through the temple at that moment. I gulped before slightly opening the confessional door and peeking outside. There was an unfamiliar old woman with white hair sitting at the second row of chairs and looking up at the ceiling. Her elegantly cut hair and luxurious green dress were enough to let me know that she was not an ordinary person. Most of the Empire's mages were nobles or royalty, similar to the Holy Kingdom's priests. And if this woman was really Sarah Belliard, then, my grandson is supposedly sick. I feel like it is my fault. The woman continued to speak. I debated whether or not I should respond. It might be better not to, since she seemed to have started on a rant. Seti, who noticed it was not a confession, looked at me with an imposing gaze. Fine. Feel free to listen. I gave my grandson his name. He is a boy, but I made his middle name a boy's name. I tilted my head. This, I was sure, was uncommon here. Both the people of the Empire and the Holy Kingdom have a unique tradition with middle names. The rule is that boys are given female middle names while girls are given male middle names. The ancestors of the continent started this tradition to prevent the mischievous and capricious Almighty God from taking their kids back to heaven. They believed doing this would make the Almighty God confused about the child's gender. The differences between male and female names seem to be clear in this world, as it used foreign names and not Korean names. The reason I did that was, I was just being capricious. It had a nice meaning and I thought that the name suited my grandson well. I also had some suspicions about the validity of the story about how the Almighty God would take children away. Of course, I have nothing to say if you ask why someone over 60 would randomly think about that. She scoffed. I left the door slightly open before sitting down. My daughter and son-in-law liked the name too. They really liked it until my grandson fainted and went into a coma. The woman's voice was as dry as a desert. It is a common story. A child is sick and the parents work hard to heal them but nothing works. In the end, their hatred was directed toward me. I couldn't hear that last part too well because it was mixed in with a sigh. I had experienced a similar situation not too long ago. The faces of Christelle, the MC of QNW, and her mother, Isabel de Sarnez, briefly appeared in my mind. They blame me for giving him such a middle name and say that the Almighty God is trying to take their child away because of my arrogance. I know they don't mean it wholeheartedly, but knowing that there is some honesty in their words, it has made me wonder if this really was the curse of the Almighty God that I had heard about. The curse could be responsible for my grandson being sick, and for the family being destroyed. Seti let out a long sigh behind me. I checked his condition before focusing on her story again. That is all. This is the situation, and I just wanted to vent to someone about it. Everything from here on is up to my daughter's family and me. It doesn't matter whether it is an incurable illness or a curse. I heard the rustling of clothes and then some footsteps. I carefully looked out to see that the woman had gotten up and was getting ready to leave. I will make my leave now, Your Highness. Thank you for listening to an old woman's grumbling, Prince Jesse. Lady Belliard. She stopped moving as I called her name. Her emerald-colored eyes seemed a bit shocked. I looked at her through the crack of the door. You know who I am, Your Highness. I'm sure it would be harder for someone to not know you. I smiled bitterly and cleared my throat. Sarah Belliard, the managing editor of the less than bi-weekly Register Greater Than. The celebrity of the Empire's media and the person known as the expert of the Holy Kingdom. She was the person who wrote a feature story on me last month. First of all, I'm sorry for your grandson's condition. She lightly nodded her head at my condolence. I could see that the old woman's face was paralyzed with sadness and guilt despite the distance between us. This might sound arrogant, but I hope that you do not consider it to be a curse. I spoke as sincerely as possible. It might be a fake religion believed by the people inside a novel, but I didn't want to treat the faith and belief of the hard-working people in front of me as something non-existent. I met someone not too long ago who was also struggling with thoughts about a curse from the Almighty God. I told that person that I believed it was not a curse as well. I am not saying it to simply make you feel better. I truly believe that it is not a curse. Seti and I made eye contact. I smiled at the young boy. I believe that there is power in the word, curse. If you think that it is a curse or think along the lines of it being a curse, it will make you start wondering if it truly is the will of the Almighty God and make you feel powerless. It will do that even if it is not the truth. The boy's orange eyes were looking at me with a piercing gaze. Of course, your grandson is actually sick. That is not a lie and nothing will change that. However, it might feel easier to give up if you accept it as a curse. You may think that there is nothing you can do, as it is the will of the Almighty God. I gently touched my hand toward the little boy's forehead. His skin had cooled down, and felt soft to the touch. I sighed in relief. I hope that you and your family will not give up, and will continue to fight. You must do so if you wish for the chance to save your grandson. I was careful not to say the wrong thing. I knew how tragic it was to have someone in the family be sick. How frustrated the family members could be. How to slowly heal. And I know it is weird for me to say something like this, but, if someone needs to be hated, it should be the Almighty God and nobody else. Good people doing good deeds with good intentions, people living their lives to the best of their ability should not blame each other. It was quiet outside the confessional. Anybody would be able to tell that I may have overstepped my boundaries here. However, her heart was so heavy and dark that she was willing to come all this way to vent to a prince whose face she didn't even know. I could not ignore that. Thank you very much. Lady Belliard responded in a quiet but firm voice. She then turned around and started walking away. I could see her long shadow moving out of the temple through the crack in the door. I slowly looked away. Seti, you are filled up. Golden ether pebbles were floating around the little boy's body. However, the boy did not budge even as I motioned for him to go. What is it? Do you have something to say? He was staring at me with a firm and piercing gaze. I turned to close the door because I was worried that he was hurting somewhere when, clunk. I heard a weird noise from where Seti was sitting. I turned around in shock. Ho, the afternoon sun was shining down on me from the ceiling of the penitent's seat. The boy had disappeared at some point. It was the top. It was not the back wall or the floor but the ceiling that was the kid's secret passage. Asterisk, it was Monday again. You met Lady Sarah Belliard. Cardinal Boutier seemed a bit tired when I met her again for the first time in 5 days. I nodded my head at her question and took a sip of anise tea. Christelle was seated next to me, drinking cold coffee as if it was water. I want these group lessons to end soon. She stopped by the temple for a moment. Frederick and Lady Belliard had a meeting on Saturday. She smiled at me. A revised edition of the April 15th less than bi-weekly Register greater than almost came out. A revised edition. Yes. Francois announced that he would make the Sword of Wisdom from the Flaming Star, the prize for the great clearance of demonic beasts on the 15th, so that information was missing from the latest issue. It was too late to put a new article in by then. That was why Lady Belliard wanted to publish a revised edition with that information while Frederick and I tired ourselves out convincing her otherwise. My hypothesis was pretty much on the mark. She seemed to have worked her butt off to prevent the news about the Sword of Wisdom from the Flaming Star from spreading. We don't like to suppress the media, but we had no choice as it had to do with a divine item. I nodded my head while chewing on a piece of bread that was full of spices. There wouldn't have been anything I could do even if the Empress and the Cardinal enjoyed suppressing the media. But it won't disappear. You mean, the Sword of Wisdom will end up being the prize for the great clearance of demonic beasts? Christelle and my eyes opened wide. And Cedric will participate in place of Frederick and I this year. TWSB. Chapter 32. Let's think of it as a field trip, one then I guess he will be attending for the first time along with me. Christelle responded. I was listening without giving it much thought before I stopped eating my bread in realization. So based on what she just said, you're right. Cedric is not going just to watch. I'm sure his goal is to win. Cardinal Boutier gently explained. I looked at her before turning and looking at Christelle, who was sitting next to me, as well. You are participating in the great clearance of demonic beasts as well, young Lady Sarnez. Christelle's blue-gray eyes sparkled as she gave a refreshing smile in response to my question. Yes. We decided to publicly announce that I am aiming to become a holy knight at the demonic beast hunting competition. It will be a chance for me to show off my skills as well. It seemed like a good strategy. It would be much more effective for her to showcase her water power in front of numerous nobles during the great clearance of demonic beasts rather than simply sending a message or making an announcement. Convincing people to accept her decision would be easier if she started her career with something like hunting demonic beasts with the imperial family backing her up. It'll be something like, the first blessing the Almighty God has bestowed on this wasteland of holy knights. That's great. I meant it. The storyline with only Christelle and Imperial Prince Cedric seemed to finally be starting. Of course, I'm sure they had a great time at the spring ball as well, but that was their first meeting, so the story of their love and adventure will start at the great clearance of demonic beasts. Yunce always went off about how they needed to break up whenever she discussed them, but in my opinion, I actually felt that they were a great pair. Christelle nodded her head in response to my congratulations. I met with numerous priests this week because of that. I was hoping there would be at least one person willing to be my partner for the duration of the great clearance. She stopped talking for a moment before looking at me. But it is difficult to find someone who meets all the conditions. The archbishops are generally too busy. The bishops said that accompanying me would be too difficult for them. And as for the more enthusiastic people, well, most of them were more interested in the distinction than actually working with me. It wasn't unexpected. Archbishops and bishops would be too busy maintaining the dioceses and handling behind-the-scene politics, so they wouldn't want to spend time on a young lady whose path to become a holy knight had not even been confirmed yet. The priests who are willing to invest their ether in Christelle are probably more interested in creating a connection with the House of Sarnez rather than her growth. It was tiring because while all of them spoke of how wonderful it was that the Empire was getting a holy knight, they were also busy calculating the feasibility of my success. Christelle quietly mumbled about how she was tired of dealing with doubtful people like that. I quickly took a peek toward the cardinal, but she seemed too preoccupied with drinking her coffee to hear Christelle's complaints. I was the only one who knew about the main character's true identity. Because of that, if it is okay with you, Prince Jesse, and if Her Majesty and Her Eminence will allow it. I quickly shoved my face into my teacup to hide as I got an ominous feeling. The sweet anise tea now felt like poison. I would like to ask if you would be my partner until next month. I will be able to find a different partner once I am officially knighted. I am costly to hire. My ether quality and quantity are both high, and I am a royal priest even if I may not look like it. Thankfully my voice had not been shaking as I said that. I shamelessly maintained a haughty expression and didn't even look toward her. Let's be calm. I can reject her and I can also be rejected. I will buy you with money. How much will it be? Wait, you know that line. Excuse me, how old is the person who transmigrated as Christelle? TL note. This line is from Autumn in My Heart, a Korean drama from 2000. I need a lot of money. Please name a price. 2 million per month. 2 million francs was the amount I received monthly from the Riester imperial family. That was the largest amount I could think of on the spot. Benjamin and Gonal said that it was enough to buy a large mansion on the outskirts of the imperial capital, and enough for a house by a lake if I built it myself. Even the daughter of Duke Sarnez should not be able to make decisions regarding such a large amount of money by herself. 4 million monthly. The condition will be that I must personally come to the imperial palace to get ether when I need it. Excuse me. Ha 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 ha. I was responding like an idiot after being suppressed by Christelle's spirit when the cardinal started laughing out loud. I was bewildered as I had never seen her burst into laughter like this. She found it so funny that she had pushed up her monocle while wiping tears away with her handkerchief. Ha ha, you must not know anything about the House of Sarnez, little prince. Isn't that right? I do know that they are extremely wealthy, but my monthly allowance is 5 million francs. Christelle nonchalantly added. My jaws dropped. I finally felt the vast difference between our transmigration conditions. She was the precious daughter of one of the wealthiest grand nobles in the empire, while I was a child born out of wedlock, and a diplomatic hostage imprisoned in the imperial palace forever. Our scales for allowances had no choice but to be different. Then do we have a deal? Will you temporarily be my partner, Your Highness? That is not for our little prince to decide. The cardinal was the one to respond to Christelle's question. She had quickly composed herself, and returned to her usual merciful and mysterious self. Our little prince came as a confessional priest for the imperial palace and is dutifully completing his task, making it difficult for him to make deals or partnerships with people from outside the imperial palace. She then quickly added on. I'm sure I told you last time as well. I realized that those beige eyes could seem cold as well. Based on her reaction just now along with the last time Christelle was getting a feel for me, she seemed to be wary of Christelle and I developing a closer relationship. I guess it makes sense since Teacher O was said to have played a big part in Imperial Prince Cedric and Christelle getting together in the novel. She probably doesn't want the potential wife of the guy she treats as her own son to get tangled with me. It would be great for me if the cardinal would stop Christelle. This is not easy. Christelle slowly leaned back as she mumbled. There were no changes to her expression despite her complaint. Her spirit seemed to be getting even stronger against the obstacle that appeared in her path like the munchkin MC she is. Then could you just share a bit of ether with me right now? Right here. My voice became louder at Christelle's sudden request. She smiled brightly. Even if we cannot make a deal, can't I at least get a sample of the goods? Did she used to work in sales or something? I became anxious at her words and had that random thought. I had no good reason to say no, so I peeked toward the cardinal. She simply had her head tilted to the side, not showing any opposition. I would have ignored her or snorted at her if I was that damn imperial prince bastard, but I couldn't do that with my personality. Damn it. Only for a moment. I managed a stoic response to her request. Christelle's long boots were shaking with anticipation. I closed my eyes and opened my holy domain. It felt as if a very small amount of paint flowed out of my fingertips and toes to paint a picture. The floor of the cardinal's office became bright as a golden circle surrounded Christelle and I. Wow! Christelle blinked her large eyes as she gasped in shock. I have seen the circles of many other priests, but this is my first time seeing a holy domain that feels so pure and clean. It is not for sale even if you say that. I imagined picking up a ball of ether in my mind. I thought that it would be enough to release one loop of ether. Knock knock. Come in. I heard someone knocking on the mahogany door. The cardinal had quickly responded, and the door swung open immediately. I stopped trying to release ether and turned my head towards the newcomer. Once I turned around, Your Royal Highness. Hi there, my dear godson. Imperial Prince Cedric, who looked shockingly handsome as usual, had entered the office. Asterisk, but why? Even if you are not yet the Imperial Crown Prince, aren't you busy? I briefly pondered that question. This was a romfan and it was normal for the MC and the male lead to interact. I wondered if Cardinal Boutier called him over again using the lesson as an excuse. The problem was that I was here like an impurity in their potential romance. What are you doing? I am about to share some of my ether with young Lady Sarnez, Your Royal Highness. I calmly responded to the Imperial Prince, who got right to the point without saying any greetings as usual. Christelle stood up and respectfully greeted the Imperial Prince. The Imperial Prince simply motioned with his eyes. He was still such a petty punk regardless of how many times I saw him. The young lady seems to have plenty of ether already. This is my personal business, so there is no need for you to comment on it, Your Royal Highness. The Imperial Prince tried to provoke Christelle, but she just smiled as she returned a passive-aggressive response. The mood in the office instantly turned cold. Natalie, the attendant who had guided the Imperial Prince inside, made eye contact with me before swiftly closing the door and disappearing. I clicked my tongue in jealousy before standing up from the couch. We will have other times to do this in the future, so I will just give you some ether next time. I then released my holy domain. It was my way of asking them to not fight and to get along with each other for now. I thought that the Imperial Prince might find it annoying for Christelle to receive ether when she didn't need it, as he had a son who suffered from ether depletion quite frequently. Christelle seemed discontent but quickly accepted my decision. Are we not using the interior training ground today, Your Eminence? The Imperial Prince suddenly changed the topic while addressing the Cardinal. I noticed that the punk was in a comfortable outfit similar to the one he wore the day he sparred against Christelle in the outdoor training ground. However, the only consistent thing between the outfits was the pair of black gloves on his hands. The leather only covered his fingers, so both the palms and the backs of his hands were half visible. It seemed extremely ineffective to me. Oh right, we were. I asked Frederick to leave it empty until 11:30 a.m. The Cardinal gently smiled as she answered the Imperial Prince while starting to clean up. She then explained how she told Her Majesty, who usually uses the interior training ground before lunch every day, that she was planning a lesson for the kids there today. With how she explained it, it seemed obvious to me that the Cardinal and the Empress had a very comfortable relationship with each other. She then continued, "The two of you head over first. I have something to discuss without our little prince." Me. "It's nothing serious. It'll be a short chat." She gently motioned for Christelle and that damn Imperial Prince to leave. The two of them respectfully bowed to the Cardinal before walking out of the room, glaring at each other with discontent. I knew they would start dating soon, so I didn't have to worry about the two main characters. I instead directed my attention to this one-on-one discussion with the Cardinal. "Your Eminence, what did you wish to talk about?" My butt was firmly in my seat, but my anxiety led me to awkwardly hold my teacup with both hands. The fragrance of the still warm anise tea tried its best to calm me down. I mentioned that Frederick and I are not going to the great clearance of demonic beasts this year, right? Yes, ma'am. As a result, they are missing a priest to take confessions from the field. Excuse me. My heart was beating wildly. I raised my head to look into the Cardinal's eyes. Demonic beasts threaten humans and are evil creatures who destroy our homes, but they are still living creatures. There are nobles who will want to confess regarding the murders they will commit or have committed during the clearing. I have always been there to listen to their sins in previous years. She was saying all this in a way that resembled singing more than speaking. It suddenly made me think about the butterfly effect. I guess things ended up like this because I changed directions as Jessie and decided to live as a confessional priest. I would like it if you could take charge of these confessions this year. If Christelle still doesn't have a partner, then it would be good for you to go and help her as she fights. The Cardinal's voice became a bit quieter. Her words about Chistel seemed strange, like she didn't actually want me to do it. It would also be good to help Cedric get the Sword of Wisdom from the Flaming Star and build a relationship with the future Imperial Crown Prince. I thought about my identity once again. I couldn't say that my decisions had absolutely no impact, but this example of the butterfly effect had actually started a long time ago. The synopsis for the beginning of QNW had gone awry from the moment the divine item inside the Temple of Boundaries was used to save me instead of Christelle. TL changed from Temple of Vigilance to Temple of Boundaries because almost 300 chapters later it makes sense. I was too focused on how this change influenced the main character and I. It seemed as if there were not two, but actually 3 people who were slammed by the typhoon caused by the fluttering of butterfly wings. The Imperial Prince was unable to gain backing from the Sarnez Duchy after their wedding did not proceed as planned. However, he seemed to have other plans as well. TWSB. Chapter 33. Let's think of it as a field trip. 2. Excuse me, there is something I am curious about. I opened my mouth. I was anxious since it was just the Cardinal and I here, but I had something to say to her as well. The Cardinal was the one who brought up the Imperial Prince first, so I felt no pressure asking my question. Feel free to ask whatever you want. His Royal Highness is Her Majesty's only child. Is there something he needs to do or get to become the Imperial Crown Prince? It didn't seem like something that required a lot of thought. I was sure that there were many branches of the Empire's imperial family, but Imperial Prince Cedric was the only direct descendant for the throne. That meant that both the Imperial Crown Prince position and the throne were guaranteed to him as long as he didn't decline the position or end up in a serious scandal to smudge the reputation of the Imperial family. The wedding with the House of Sarnez wasn't weird since he would have been able to receive political assistance from them if it worked out, but does the divine item, the Sword of Wisdom from the Flaming Star, have something to do with the Imperial Crown Prince position? Something connected my mind. A fire attribute divine item and a little child who uses fire attribute ether. Is it maybe for Sadie? TL. Author has indicated it is spelled Sadie 300 plus chapters in. Thanks to Eve for letting me know. I will eventually change them in the older chapters. The Cardinal's eyes opened wide. Her usually stoic face was filled with shock and slight anxiety. Is that the name the child gave you? Yes, ma'am, that is how he introduced himself. Her face turned rather odd at my response. She seemed entertained, yet also full of disbelief. I remember seeing this sort of expression before. Who was it? Of course, that was not important right now. The Imperial Crown Prince position seemed to be just an excuse for the Imperial Prince to get the divine item for his son who suffers from a lack of ether. Is that kid the child you asked me to help in the past? I finally asked the question I had been wondering about for days. The Cardinal pushed her hand to her temple on one side before quietly sighing. That's right. I also know that he was the one who depleted your ether. I'm sorry. I had never heard such a genuine apology from her before. The ether depletion she mentioned was talking about the first day I met Sadie, the day he looted me for my ether until I fainted. The Cardinal and Vice Captain Elizabeth had been by my side when I woke up. I had thought that the Cardinal was there to use her healing powers on me while Vice Captain Elizabeth was there to apologize as she was in charge of protecting me, but looking back at it now, both of them were people who knew Sadie. I scolded the kid after that. Nothing similar happened, right? No ma'am, after that, he took the ether through my circle when he needed it. That is a relief. The Cardinal truly looked relieved. However, I was still full of questions. Does that kid not have a priest partner? Did that child tell you how his body ended up with such a condition? My mouth closed on its own. Sadie had never properly answered any of my questions nor had he shared his story. If it was a private issue, I shouldn't dig any deeper than this. The Cardinal must have sensed my hesitation as she smiled brightly and continued speaking. I want to tell you everything, but I think it would be better if you waited until he chooses to open his heart to you. She then added on about how his heart already seemed quite open. I wasn't sure about that statement, but I couldn't say anything when someone so close to Sadie and his family was saying that. I just nodded my head. Then it's my turn now. There's something I've been curious about for a while. Please ask away. The Cardinal squinted her eyes as she smiled. She looked like a young girl who was happy to receive a new toy as a present. Has Sadie ever revealed his identity to you? No ma'am, it is just my hypothesis. She did not continue to ask what my hypothesis was. The cardinal laughed out loud before taking a sip of her coffee. I quietly organized my thoughts while holding my teacup. Now that the importance and influence of divine items has been proven twice in the QNW world, it was definitely a green light that I got the chance to see the Sword of Wisdom from the Flaming Star in person. The novel was just beginning. The chances of the divine item sending me back home are extremely low, as I have no idea whether or not Prince Jesse will live or die in the future war. But the only way to walk down a path with no regrets is to at least make an effort before you fall. In addition, helping the Imperial Prince win the great clearance of demonic beasts and obtain the Sword of Wisdom would be helping Sadie. I wondered what his plan was, since his chances of actually pulling the Sword of Wisdom out were low, and I don't think I would be of much help for that damn Imperial Prince anyways. I also never wanted to do anything to associate with that punk, but how can I say no when it is for a child in pain? Then I will participate in the great clearance of demonic beasts as well. I put my teacup down. My palm cooled down as the teacup's warmth disappeared. I knew that realistically I had no choice, but there is a difference between being forced to go and choosing to go on my own accord. I will also cooperate with His Royal Highness. The cardinal smiled brightly after hearing my response. I thought that I was seeing quite a lot of smiles on her face today. I didn't know there was a place like this in the Imperial Palace. Gonal shouted in an excited voice. I smiled and nodded my head. A cool spring breeze was coming from past the hill Benjamin was pointing at, blowing the grass around us flat to the ground. It was an amazing view. It was so beautiful, but I thought it would be even better if Yunsen, my brother, were here with me. I thought it was just a mountain because it was called the Rear Mountain. I didn't expect there to be a place like this. Please come whenever you want, Your Highness. Agnes, the mountain keeper, commented with a smile while walking in front of us. I moved Demi, who was dangling around my waist, up onto my shoulder. Isn't it nice to come out to an open area like this, squee? The little punk squeed with joy. I took Demi with me whenever I went for a walk in the garden and spent time with him on the balcony throughout the day, but even that probably wasn't enough for him to feel comfortable. Even if he is a divine beast, he is still an animal, so it must be very frustrating being unable to run around. I petted his fluffy tail with an apologetic heart. It is currently 11 a.m. on Wednesday. It was obvious why we were climbing the rear mountain of Juliet Palace during my group lesson with the cardinal. A field trip. It reminds me of when I was younger. Christelle said something rather risky while walking next to me. I wondered if she thought that it would be okay for the others to find out about her transmigration into that body. My expression must have been a bit odd, as she chuckled and quickly explained herself. I used to have picnics on the hill at the Lord's Castle with my mother when I was younger. I nodded once. What a great excuse. It felt very natural. I kept that assessment to myself. It's been a while since I've been here. I should come again with Frederick next time. There are many trees that I haven't seen before. I turned around and took a peek at the cardinal after hearing her voice. She was wearing the most comfortable outfit I had seen her in so far and was linking arms with Imperial Prince Cedric at the back of the group. I recalled the reason today ended up like this. 2 days ago, on Monday, the day that I said that I would participate in the great clearance of demonic beasts. The cardinal and I left the office and arrived at the interior training ground a few minutes later than Christelle and that damn Imperial Prince. It was only about a 15-minute difference, but the two main characters managed to cause an incident during that short time. We arrived to find the training ground flooded with a layer of water with all sorts of spears, swords, and what looked like cannonballs embedded into the walls and ceiling. It was a bit amazing that Christelle, who must not have been able to control her power, was drenched while the Imperial Prince was standing there perfectly dry with his hair stylishly kept up. Cardinal Boutier looked at the two of them and, who started it? She gently asked that question. Honestly speaking, I would have immediately started apologizing, as she looked like my brother right before he got angry. I would have immediately said that the other person just got swept up in my mischief and ran off while saying that I'll start cleaning right away. But as for RMC and the male lead, I see. They quietly glared at each other without saying anything. Even if Christelle gets rid of the water on the ground, there are still a lot of damaged areas that need fixing. Frederick uses this place a lot, Christelle finally started to look a bit anxious as the cardinal mumbled to herself. Please accept my deepest apologies, Your Eminence. I will pay for the repairs. You use money as if it was water. The imperial prince cut her off. I laughed because I thought he was provoking Christelle with a pun about her water ability. I'm sorry, I thought I was chuckling quietly. All three of them simultaneously looked over at me. I got scared and shut up. The cardinal quietly looked us over before saying, I guess it can't be helped since you are both hot-blooded youngsters. I was the stupid one for thinking I could teach you all while cooped up somewhere like this. She then sighed. After that, she said, should we go on a field trip next time? That was how this had happened. The cardinal had been smiling, but it was obvious that she was angry, and by then, Christelle and the damn imperial prince bastard finally seemed to realize that she was upset. Nobody had been able to oppose her sudden offer. She was giving off such a scary vibe where we would have had to shut up and follow her even if she told us we were going on a military march. This should be a good place. Agnes pointed to our side after taking us to a flat area on the rear mountain. I snapped out of my thoughts and helped Gonal and Benjamin lay out a large picnic mat. The cardinal's attendant, Natalie, and the imperial prince's attendant, David, also got busy unpacking their things to get the drinks and snacks out. It feels like we are on a picnic. The cardinal shared her thoughts in a warm voice. Everybody seemed to be silently agreeing. Keywords such as, dressed in full combat gear, had dominated my mind until we made our way here, but I felt at peace looking at the well-maintained pathways and the lush green hill. The 9 people and 1 animal sat down relaxedly on the mat. Thank you very much for the meal. I wiped my hands with a cloth before receiving a warm Queen Amman and a lightly steeped cup of artichoke tea. I bit down on the crunchy bread and the sweet taste of caramel filled my mouth. The slices of almond added texture and a savory taste while the gooey interior wrapped around my tongue. It's so good. I shared my assessment of the food as usual. Benjamin and Gonal looked quite satisfied as they started drinking their coffee and strawberry juice respectively. Christelle watched all of it unfold before laughing loudly in a pretty voice. I thought this last time as well, but you eat so well and look so happy when you eat. Doesn't he? The cardinal smiled as she responded. Natalie, as the person who brings me snacks every lesson, agreed without any hesitation as well. Thank you very much. It was a compliment I heard frequently in my original body, but it was the first time someone brought it up in front of so many people like this. I got embarrassed and reached toward the plate of fruit. Prue. I peeled a lychee and gave it to Demi, which distracted me enough to calm down a bit. Did you need something, Your Royal Highness? I then made eye contact with Imperial Prince Cedric, who was sitting across from me. He was looking at me with a somewhat disgruntled gaze, and had not even touched the espresso in his hand. Why doesn't he just add some water and sugar if his coffee is too bitter? Can you not feel it at all? He suddenly asked. I wondered if all the male leads of Rom fans left things out of their speech like this, or if this bastard was just a special case. I cannot understand what you are saying if you leave details out like that, Your Royal Highness. Your mana sensitivity has issues. That damn Imperial Prince briskly commented before getting up. His attendant, David, made swift movements to get his coffee from him. I was blinking wondering if he wanted to start something, when Christelle also jumped up. The iced Americano that she was drinking was now in my hand. Something is headed this way. Excuse me. Gonal became anxious after hearing Christelle's comment. She and the Imperial Prince were both looking past the hill. I looked in the same direction but I couldn't see or feel anything. Esteemed godmother. The Imperial Prince called the cardinal in an extremely low voice. Her beige-colored eyes looked at me and gently curled up. I said that it feels like a picnic, not that we are actually on a picnic. Rumble. I then heard the ground rumbling from a distance. TWSB. Chapter 34. Let's think of it as a field trip. 3. Squeal. Demi responded before me. His long and round tail rose up and he walked off of the picnic map. The way he slowly opened and closed his mouth over and over made it seem as if he was threatening something or wary of it. What was that noise just now? I asked Cardinal Boutier about the situation. She had a picturesque smile on her face and did not respond. Rumble. I heard a thunder-like noise roar through the ground again. The people in our group started stirring. I opened my holy domain without any hesitation. The circle of golden ether lit up the top of the picnic mat and started expanding at its master's will. My holy domain's maximum diameter was about 30 meters. It was large enough to easily cover the 7 people on the mat, as well as the Imperial Prince, Christelle, and Demi, who were standing near us. As for how to make it even larger than this, well, there is a way, but it is impossible to do right now. Demonic beasts. Imperial Prince Cedric answered in a low voice. Gonal gasped in shock. I quickly stood up and walked over to Demi. I could see a few red dots once I stared into the distance so hard that my eyes started to hurt. Why are there demonic beasts here? I heard that there was a strong barrier around the Imperial Palace. I stopped talking mid-sentence. I then turned to look at the Cardinal. No way. Right. You all seemed a bit tense, so I had them undo the barrier around the mountain range for a bit. I also had the Imperial Guard help me put some bait out. Your Eminence. Frederick gave me permission. Do you remember what you did to the Empress's favorite training ground? I gulped. So basically, the 2 main characters had destroyed the interior training ground. In return, the angry Empress and Cardinal decided to teach their one and only son and someone else's precious daughter a lesson. But still, drawing demonic beasts to the rear mountain of the Imperial Palace. What about the civilians? Why do both of them have such terrible personalities? Is the Imperial Prince the way he is because he takes after both of them? You can't properly prepare for the great clearance of demonic beasts by practicing against other people, so I had some demonic beasts prepared. Don't talk about this as if you are talking about today's lunch menu. Stomp 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 stomp. They're coming. Christelle commented. Bean-sized drops of water started floating up from around her feet. The red dots far in the distance were rapidly coming closer to us. The dots were each now about the size of a fingernail. Pound 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 pound. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A total of 5 creatures were rushing toward us. I walked to the front of the picnic mat. The Imperial Prince and Christelle were standing in the very front while I was standing behind them to protect the Cardinal and the others. Please don't step out of my circle. Don't worry, Your Highness. Benjamin responded in a calm voice. The mountain keeper, Agnes, was looking around the back for any boulders or trees we could hide behind. The others seemed to have seen demonic beasts before, unlike me, as they calmed down almost instantly. Well, everybody except Gonal. I'm just going to be cheering you all on. The Cardinal teased us in a relaxed voice. I couldn't help but scoff. I shook my head and had my ether flow to the tips of my hands. Warmth soon flowed down Tommy palms and ether TL. AUDIOBOOks announced a special TWSB board game where it is spelled as ether, so spelling change it is. Orbs the size of steamed buns soon appeared. Young Lady Sarnez, please feel free to take them down without worrying about running out of ether. That is great, Your Highness. I'm glad to hear that. I clenched my hand into a fist before reopening it. The golden ether orb flickered on and off like a fluorescent lamp. I needed to activate the flow of ether early in order to support her as quickly as possible. I haven't used any healing powers yet, but I'm sure it should be doable if I follow everything I read. Pound 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 pound, moo. I could hear a beast roar. Then, I could start to see the demonic beasts in the distance. They looked like disgustingly red bulls with a mane around their necks. Their skin was glossy like snake skin. They also seemed twice the size of normal bulls. Their eyes were glowing white as they ran toward us, making them look extremely scary. They are toxin bulls. The previously silent Imperial Prince commented. He slowly took a few steps forward before pulling the sword out of the scabbard on his right hip. Toxin bulls. Are they bull-shaped demonic beasts that release poison? Yes. My mind calmed down. I had read about them while trying to find information on the red pandas when they first appeared in the Imperial Palace. The toxin bulls were herbivores, but they release poison created from the plants they ate to attack humans. Fire attribute would be the most effective against poison, but we only had a swordsman and a water attribute user. We cannot let them get close. These things breathe out poison as well. Squee. Demi quietly screeched. The little guy seemed to have some complaints as he roamed around my feet, so I lowered myself. Are you scared? Do you want me to hug you? Squee. Demi shook his head to say no before standing up on his hind legs. And then, prue, Shaw. The grass in front of Demi started to bend. No, to be more specific, they're knots. Blades of grass were being tied with each other to create knots. I reached over and pulled at one, but the knot held firm with no signs of weakening. A way to hold the demonic beasts down to prevent them from approaching us while we take care of them. A thought suddenly flashed through my mind. Your Royal Highness, young Lady Sarnez. Let's do it this way. I offered a suggestion. The clear blue water-like eyes and the burning orange eyes simultaneously turned to look at me. Asterisk moo. Ruar. They were less than 100 meters away now. The 5 toxin bulls were drooling as they charged toward us. The saliva dripping from their tongues melted some of the wildflowers. I channeled a lot of ether into Demi, who was in my arms. Demi, can you do it? Whimper. It's okay. Big sis and big bro over there will take care of it even if you make a mistake. 2, 3, the red panda raised both front paws. Now, crack. It sounded like a giant watermelon cracking in half as the path on the hill sunk down. Moo. Roar. Ruar. There was a mix of mooing and roaring as the unbalanced toxin bulls fell into the sinkhole. Demi had hit the location on the mark. Unfortunately, the hole was not very deep. Ruar. The 5 fallen beasts flailed to stand back up. The Imperial Prince started moving even without my signal. He ran forward so quickly that I couldn't even see him. He then elegantly swung his sword-wielding left arm. There was a faint white light and bong. Moo. There was an extremely loud explosion before the Imperial Prince's sword aura slashed through the vital points of 3 demonic beasts. It was truly a sword art to the afterlife. I couldn't believe that he was still not a sword master. But this was not the time to blank out in shock. The 2 toxin bulls that barely managed to avoid getting hit in vital points were stumbling as they crawled up the sinkhole. Young Lady Sarnez. I poured all of the ether I had been gathering into Christelle, who was still standing inside the circle. I could see the main character smiling as bright as the stars. Christelle took a deep breath and then, please leave it to me, tap. She kicked off the ground and instantly ran off. I was amazed by this special ability of holy knights that I had only read about until now. They had amazing physical strength regular people couldn't even dream about. This speed was something she would not have been able to get if the novel had progressed as written. Splash, splash, water quickly gathered around her boots once she approached the sinkhole. A broad stream of water followed the slope of the hill and into the sinkhole. Boom, moo. The dry dirt turned into mud, becoming very slippery and forcing the demonic beasts that were climbing the walls to stumble and fall back in. Large streams of water ruthlessly poured down to fill the pit. Demonic beasts were naturally weak against water and fire, so they weakened as their bodies became wet. Ruar, only one of them was alive after a while. Moo, Sizzle, the blood and saliva of the demonic beasts was being melted by the water, becoming a solution of poisonous liquid. I was relieved that we were able to pool it into a single area. We would not have been able to prevent the poisonous liquid from spreading everywhere if Christelle was going up against them alone, and the Imperial Prince fighting alone might have led to them splitting up to overwhelm him with numbers. HNNNNG. There was a loud breathing noise before the last demonic beast closed its eyes. My body stopped being tense as I sighed in relief. Your Highness. I could hear Gonal, who was quietly hiding behind the closest boulder, mumbling. I turned around to see Benjamin, Natalie, David, and Agnes looking up at the sky and praying. I scoffed in disbelief. Ah, son of A, I heard Christelle's voice at that moment. I jumped in shock and turned to look to find her looking as if she was about to fall. Demi had tied knots in the grass near the sinkhole in case the demonic beasts escaped, but it looked as if her foot got caught in one of them instead. Are you okay? Yes, I am okay, Your Highness. I completely forgot about these. She smiled at me. I smiled back out of etiquette and looked at the Imperial Prince. I saw that he wasn't injured at all, as I had expected, and then we made eye contact. I wondered if he was going to try to provoke me again, but he did not say much. He just threw his broken sword on the ground and started walking away. It seemed that the swords he used were too weak to withstand his sword aura. How can someone who is the Imperial Prince not have a famous sword of some kind? Good job, everyone. That was good for a warm-up, wasn't it? The Cardinal's gentle voice descended upon the picnic mat. She was drinking coffee in the same position she had been in before the group of toxin bulls had arrived. Christelle chuckled and nodded her head. I petted Demi, who was squirming into my arms, before whispering to him. Good job, Demi. You the real MVP today. You were the best. Screech the red panda screeched valiantly. My circle slowly disappeared. Asterisk Vice Captain Elizabeth, who had quickly emptied over half of a cup of plum juice, finally looked refreshed. I was wondering why Her Eminence had summoned the Imperial Guard. She smiled refreshingly as if her lingering curiosity from the past few days had finally been resolved. Her olive-colored hair fluttered in the spring breeze that was blowing through the garden of Juliet Palace. It had been one day since we pummeled those toxin bulls on the rear mountain. Today's morning tea time was with my guest, Vice Commander Maudet, who had ditched work. Her Eminence has no interest in the knights or the military. We usually do not have any interactions with her. She explained what she meant. But for some reason, she was looking for a few of our core members who had experiences clearing demonic beasts. I heard that she even asked if they had experience herding cows. I wondered what kind of joke it was, but it was for a unique field experience. I can't help but admire her. Vice Captain Elizabeth's splendid gray eyes were sparkling. Seeing this look of respect in her eyes for Cardinal Boutier, someone who was quickly becoming the icon of violence in my mind, the future of the Empire probably has a speck of dust in it. Please include me in field trips like that in the future, Your Highness. It was not a field trip. Getting to eat dessert from the Juliet Palace in a scenic area and catching some demonic beasts sure sounds like a picnic to me. She meant it. I had a bitter smile on my face as I wet my lips with my burdock tea. Yesterday's experience was definitely constructive, but a part of my heart turned cold thinking about the great clearance of demonic beasts, which was more intense and much larger in size. Even though I knew nothing bad would happen while being with the two main characters, Russell, Prince Jesse. I heard the grass being stepped on as Benjamin appeared from one side of the garden. He was holding a plate covered by a silver lid in one hand. He must have brought snacks for Vice Captain Elizabeth and me. I have both good news and bad news, but I will start with the good news, Your Highness. Ah, okay. Don't people usually ask which one you would rather hear first? The good news is that the coconut cake today is the best I have ever had. He revealed the contents of the plate. It was a dessert full of finely shaved coconut powder that looked like Korean shaved ice. A dark chocolate symbol of the Church of the Almighty God was at the center. Vice Captain Elizabeth commented about how, "It is magnificent, it is splendid. TL, there's a trio of Korean compliments that goes, it's magnificent, it's splendid, it is a gift from God." The corners of my lips curled all the way up to my ears at this extremely good news. As for the bad news, you have received an interview request, Your Highness. TWSB, Chapter 35, The Scoundrel of the Holy Kingdom, 1, an interview. What, is it perhaps the less than bi-weekly Register greater than? Vice Captain Elizabeth asked for me since I was too shocked to finish my sentence. The serious look on Benjamin's face seemed to be spreading to her a bit as well. The less than bi-weekly Register greater than was the Beau Monde magazine that I had spent the most time reading since coming to this place. Over half of the Empire's nobles subscribe to it, while the other half are said to read it with their friends who do. TL, the OG version of sharing Netflix passwords. Yes, Your Highness. Lady Sarah Belliard, the managing editor, officially requested to interview you and Her Majesty has approved. Benjamin calmly explained before serving coconut cake on the tea table. I couldn't help but have questions that filled my mind even as I picked up a fork. I don't know why this is happening all of a sudden. It was quiet until now. To be honest with you, it has not been quiet, Your Highness. Benjamin cautiously responded. I stopped taking a bite of the soft cake and looked at him. Your Highness, I'm sure you are well aware of the fact that the Empress Palace has been filtering all personal communication from the nobles to you. All gifts have been stored in the imperial safe as well because we do not know the intentions behind them. Yes, you told me. It is the same for any contact from the media. This is especially true for the less than bi-weekly Register greater than which has been asking for a personal interview with you since the day you arrived at the palace. Her Majesty had declined them all until recently. As I expected. Well, I'm thankful for that since I would like to be as far away from attention as possible. I wonder what made her change her mind. I responded to him. It made me a bit anxious, but there was no reason I couldn't do an interview. It was something I had never done before in my life, but I felt as if it would be fine if I answered as they told me to answer, and feigned ignorance for any potentially complicated questions. I was ready to follow anything the Empress Palace told me to do, as long as it wasn't something difficult. They feed me 3 meals a day and pay me to stay here. If the people who hold my life in their hands tell me to bark, how can I not bark? I just wanted to know why they suddenly allowed this interview. To start with the conclusion, it is because of Marquis Francois Duham. Benjamin sighed as he responded. Vice Captain Elisabeth, who had been quietly listening, nodded her head while saying that she understood. I looked at her and then at Benjamin. Marquis Francois Duham was Captain Duham's older brother and the person in charge of the great clearance of demonic beasts. He was the one who frustrated the cardinal by announcing that he would put the divine item, the Sword of Wisdom from the Flaming Star, as the prize for the winner of the competition. Ah, did she allow them to interview me in return for pushing back the announcement regarding the Sword of Wisdom from the Flaming Star? That is correct, Your Highness. I nodded my head at the immediate response. The cardinal had explained the situation in the past. It made me think about Lady Sarah Belliard, who was willing to share Marquis Duham's proclamation even at the cost of sending out a revised edition. Even if the Marquis had talked about the winner's prize, the difference was heaven and hell when it came to being a rumor against being written in the most influential magazine in the empire. Her Majesty is usually relaxed with the nobles. She believes that it will be less annoying to her that way. The nobles can do things freely as long as they do not get on Her Majesty's nerves. You are saying that this media control is a unique circumstance. Yes, sir. Her Majesty must have thought that it would be cleaner to give her a reward since something like this pretty much never happens. I was that reward. Rather than owing Lady Belliard and being bothered by her frequently, the Empress wanted to give her a treat and shut Lady Belliard up. When will the interview take place? I asked with curiosity. I heard that it will take place at 2 p.m. in the Empress Palace tomorrow. That's fast. I put a piece of the sweet yellow cake in my mouth and let it melt down. I mean, when else would you use a slacker of a diplomatic hostage? I did not consider the great clearance of demonic beasts as a similar deal since I said that I would go. Your Highness, please be cautious around Lady Belliard. Vice Captain Elisabeth warned me in a serious tone. I stopped my hand from attacking the cake and made eye contact with her. I was almost looted dry by her a few months ago. The Vice Captain of the Imperial Guard then raised her left hand. The ring on her fourth finger shined brightly in the sunlight. I had seen it on her hand the first time I met her. It had a splendid jewel at the center. It is a yellow diamond. How interesting. The real Prince Jesse might have seen it frequently, but it was my first time seeing it. She quietly chuckled at my response. An engagement is a person's personal life, but she wanted to dig into it solely because I was the successor for the Maudet County. She is not an easy person to deal with. Oh, it really was an engagement ring. I wanted to know who her fiancé was, but I did not ask because it felt odd asking her before she mentioned it first. Anyway, it seemed that the way this world's media chases after celebrities was the same as it is in my old world. I thought that it was an obvious development because the author of QNW was Korean. I recalled how Sadie had talked back to me with his usual sharp gaze in the confessional a few days ago. You can't eavesdrop on someone else's confession. That's supposed to be a secret. Sarah Belliard doesn't deserve such consideration. I wonder what he meant by that. The little boy had such a strong reaction to her. Benjamin was calling the interview bad news, and Vice Captain Elisabeth struggled with her. Did they just mean that Lady Belliard is a trashboarder? TL. Korean slang for reporter plus trash was used, so I created the term trashboarder. Thank you very much. The woman's old voice was still vivid in my mind. She had an ill grandson and her relationship with her daughter and son-in-law had suffered because of it. Of course, you can't cover up other issues just because she had such a sad story. But, yes, I cannot meet someone with my heart already leaning in one direction. I thoroughly chewed on the cake to make sure that I didn't forget that. I will say I don't know to any difficult questions and respond with as little as possible to the easy questions as well. That should be good, right? I smiled as I said that. Vice Captain Elisabeth gave me a thumbs up, saying that I had the right mindset. Benjamin silently nodded his head, but he still looked worried. Squee-Demi suddenly popped out of the garden shrubs. He must be hungry after running around and having fun. I cleared my mind as I handed him a thinly sliced mango. We had caught 5 demonic beasts yesterday and I had been studying all day after returning to the palace, so I wanted to leave tomorrow's affairs for tomorrow's me to deal with. Yesterday's me was such a selfish bastard. How could you only think about yourself? He is not someone who needs a lot of makeup. His Highness also pulls off beautiful colors very well. I see. His skin is so clean as well. The boss of the makeup department in the Imperial Palace was holding a large brush-like item in his hand, and the boss of the attire department I had met back at the spring ball were chatting with each other while I was seated in front of them. One of the numerous empty rooms of the Empress Palace was full of people attending to me. This is so nerve-wracking. The people of the Empress Palace rushed over to Juliet Palace early in the morning, threw me into the tub, and frantically started to get me ready. The fact that Sarah Belliard, a media celebrity, managed to land an interview with a diplomatic hostage seemed to have created a bigger ripple than I had expected. I managed to see a miracle in action when all of the attendants finally left me alone after I told them that I would starve all day if they didn't let me wash alone. I naturally had no plans to starve myself, so I was relieved that the threat worked. The best way to describe Prince Jess's skin. The summer cool tone. Christelle, who was seated on the couch observing the chaos, said something that nobody here would understand. This definitely sounds like something Yuns talked about a few times, but I don't really remember what it means. I think it meant skin that looked cool even in the summer or skin that looks even better in the summer. Anyway, it was a term that should only work in Korea, so I feigned ignorance and changed the subject. Do you not have to stop by your house, young Lady Sarnez? Why are you killing time here? Please go home. That was what I actually meant by that, but Christelle did not even budge. Anything you do while ditching class is fun. I couldn't say anything to that since it was true. She smiled as she saw my mouth close before happily observing the clothes that the attire team had selected and brought over for me. I thought that the interview would start after lunch because it was scheduled for 2 p.m. I had never expected them to cause such a ruckus from the morning. Even Benjamin and Gonal seemed quite shocked this time. I suppose that I should expect a ruckus for anything the Empress is involved with in the future. My Friday lesson with the Cardinal was cancelled, so the fact that Christelle came over to play was one of the tiny misfortunes of the day. My mother worries a lot if I only stay at the residence. The main character suddenly responded. I had no idea what to say to that. It is not easy to see someone who treats me so well suffering. I feel that way even though I don't have many memories about my mother. She then said that that was the reason she left the house whenever she had an excuse to do so. Lady Isabel de Sarnez still seemed to be unable to drop her concerns for her daughter. No parent would be able to do so, but I could see a bit of Christelle's personality based on her response. She was an affectionate person, as Yuns had told me, and seemed weak to the older sister characters. It wasn't that difficult to think that an office worker in her 20s would consider Lady Sarnez, a woman in her 30s, to be an older sister. His straight hair doesn't cause many issues, so we can just comb it over. I was quietly in my thoughts when the makeup department boss proclaimed that as if he had made a great discovery. Wait, it's not like I'm some kind of idol, whatever, I guess I should be happy that they won't put any makeup on me. I remember how much Yuns hated it since it is such a hassle getting it off. Asterisk, this is my first time coming to this side. It is extremely luxurious. Christelle seemed amazed while looking at the mural on the ceiling. She looked extremely entertained after she ended up having lunch with me in the Empress Palace and accompanying me to the interview location. I couldn't turn her away after seeing the grim look on her face while talking about her mother. I see. It was also my first time coming around the Empress's office, as I had only been to the Cardinal's office and the dining area. We were slowly walking down the wide hallway of the Empress Palace, following an attendant with Benjamin and Gonal behind us. This person is, I observed a large portrait in front of the Empress's office, while Christelle was inspecting the mural. It was a portrait of someone I didn't know, but there was no way I could not recognize that face. That is His Royal Highness, Prince Alexander. Benjamin responded to my question. Alexander Ryester, the man who was said to have given up his title of Duke for love. The Empress's husband, who had left this world now, only remained as a portrait in front of his spouse's room. He looked almost exactly the same as Imperial Prince Cedric, but his black hair was down to his waist and his eyes were as blue as the deep sea. The thrilling Archmage, Your Royal Highness. I suddenly heard Gonal's urgent voice. I turned around wondering if Cardinal Boutier had appeared. TL. In Korean, the same title is used for pretty much everyone. Jessie, Cedric, Cardinal Boutier, the Empress, etc. Hence Jess's confusion with who it is when in English all of their titles are different. Nobody said that she would be taking part in the interview. However, the person who was there was not the cardinal. Your loyal subject greets our Royal Highness. Christelle greeted him first. The attendants, who were momentarily shocked, quickly showed their respects as well. Unlike the portrait silently observing us, the eyes of the person slowly walking over to us was the color of the sunset. I calmly greeted Imperial Prince Cedric and the woman walking one step behind him. Hello, Your Royal Highness. Hello, Lady Belliard. TWSB. Chapter 36. The Scoundrel of the Holy Kingdom. 2. The location that the Empress provided for the interview was larger than my room in Juliet Palace. I followed the attendant from Empress Palace that led me to sit at a couch that was reserved for the higher-ranking individual. The way my body sank into the couch made me feel relaxed and made me think that they truly had the highest quality stuff here. Lady Sarah Belliard sat across from me. You must be close with young Lady Christelle de Sarnez, Your Highness. No, not at all. She said something that could get me into a lot of trouble. I immediately denied it. Just a moment ago, Christelle, the Imperial Prince, Lady Belliard, and I had awkwardly greeted each other outside the Empress's office. Christelle thanked me for playing with her and left while the Imperial Prince ignored us as he walked into the Empress's office like he owned the place. I had been anxious about how that punk might get involved with things this time, but thankfully it seemed to have just been a coincidence. Lady Belliard, the 3 attendants, and I entered the interview room as originally planned. However, Lady Belliard seemed to have decided to take my answer and twist it as she pleases. Ah, so you do not know the young lady's middle name yet? I plan to continue on not knowing it. I quickly shut her down. I absolutely could not say that I already knew it or that I had heard it during our first meeting. Lady Belliard laughed leisurely before saying something else. Anyway, I didn't expect to see the most handsome man on the continent, the most handsome man of the Empire, and the most handsome man of the Holy Kingdom in one place. I must be very lucky. What is this? She's talking so quickly it sounds like she is rapping. Although she didn't say any difficult words, it was hard for me to understand what she was trying to say. She must have noticed my confusion as she quickly explained. His Royal Highness, the Prince Alexander Nicole Riester, was called the most handsome man on the continent when he was alive. His Royal Highness, Imperial Prince Cedric, is, in all accounts, the most handsome man in the Empire. She was talking about how she saw Imperial Prince Cedric, the portrait of Prince Consort Alexander, and me in the hallway. It's not like we're F4. TL. After chatting with some people, this is most likely a Boys Over Flowers reference, with F4 or Flower 4 referring to the 4 pretty boys. It was giving me the chills, but I let it be. The Imperial Prince looks almost the same as the deceased Prince Consort, so it wasn't weird to hear about how both of them were handsome. Even Yuns, who frequently sang about how this punk was craptrick, would blink out whenever she saw a picture of the Imperial Prince. I see. Your Highness, do you know why Her Majesty chose the Empress Palace for us to have this interview? Lady Belliard's tone turned a bit sharp. I sat up out of reflex. The interview was taking place in a reception room close to where the Empress works. Is this the first question? It was probably to suppress your spirit, Lady Belliard. This is a place where you can continuously feel that Her Majesty is close by. Lady Belliard smiled at my response. She seemed to like what I said. I thought that she looked like the strict editor-in-chief in that movie my brother liked. I think it was called Less Than the Devil Wears Prada Greater Than or something like that. That is quite the skilled analysis. However, there is one other reason as well, Your Highness. I heard that Juliet Palace started some renovations last month. She probably did not want to show me the renovation site. The old woman's green eyes were sparkling with intelligence as she spoke. It was to be expected, but she looked much more energetic than when I had peeked at her through the gap in the confessional door. Her gently fluttering short white hair, her red satin dress, everything about her down to the wrinkles on her face had a way of giving her a charismatic look that was enough to suppress the person she was talking to. The renovations have finished. You seem to be slower at getting information than I had expected, Lady Belliard. That was what I said to her. I purposely left out the fact that it only finished 2 days ago. Lady Belliard smiled while looking as if she had not expected to hear this. The reason that a part of Juliet Palace needed renovations was because I destroyed the inside of my bedroom and the window while dealing with the twin assassins last month. The Empress must have not shown any signs of it to Lady Belliard. She was probably also wary of some people giving Lady Belliard eyewitness accounts of what had happened. That was why Lady Belliard was invited to the Empress Palace instead of Juliet Palace where I reside. I thought that you were just a warm person, but you know how to point your thorns as well, Your Highness. She openly gave her assessment of me. It upset me, but living in a Confucian society for 29 years made it difficult to talk back to an elder. I also didn't want to fall for her provocation, so I simply smiled and changed topics. I am only speaking the truth. I heard that you have a time limit, so you should probably get the interview going, Lady Belliard. The Empress had only given Lady Belliard 30 minutes. It could be considered long or short depending on what you were doing. Then I will start with something that I believe most of our readers would be curious about. The editor-in-chief of the less than bi-weekly Register Greater Than opened her notebook and put on a small pair of spectacles. I reaffirmed what I told myself earlier. I don't know anything that could make things complicated, and I should also give only short responses to the things I do actually know. What do you think about your nickname as the Scoundrel of the Holy Kingdom? Lady Belliard, that is disrespectful to our esteemed Highness. Benjamin, who was standing behind me, gently scolded her for her ruthless question. I turned my head to tell him that I was okay. It wasn't like I didn't expect something like this from someone who was in charge of the best-selling publication in the Empire. I'm not sure. A scoundrel, I dragged out the end. This was actually something I was probably more curious about than she was. It had been on my mind since the first day I transmigrated into this world. What kind of life did the real Prince Jesse live for him to be publicly known as a scoundrel? I read about how he spread all sorts of gossip in the Holy Kingdom and stole the hearts of numerous noble women, but I had no way of knowing if any of it was true. Yunce had never said anything about Prince Jesse's past, and usually only talked about how sweet he was to Christelle and how devoted he was to her. I don't have many thoughts about it. That was why this was my choice for a response. It wasn't about me anyway. Ho ho ho, this is your chance to give any excuses or explanations. Lady Belliard chuckled in a low voice as she explained. Excuses. I need to know what happened to make excuses. Which incident are you specifically asking about? Oh, you are asking me, Your Highness. The first thing that comes to mind is the rumor about how you were timing two married women. I heard that one of them was in the last month of their pregnancy while the other was a newlywed priestess. I've been told that everybody in the Holy Kingdom knows about this. My jaw dropped. I could hear Gonal gasping behind me. What should I be more shocked about right now? The fact that Prince Jesse was responsible for some crazy infidelity. The fact that it was with not one but two married women. Or maybe the fact that young Yunce liked a bastard like this. Hold on, does this world have the same background setting that was explained in the novel? Your Highness. Benjamin calmly called my name and put a hand on my shoulder before removing it. I internally shook my head vigorously. I had no way of confirming whether this was true or false. Calm down, June Jesse. Proceed according to the guidelines you set for yourself. I don't know what you are talking about. You don't know. Feign ignorance on all awkward or difficult questions. It wasn't as if I was lying when I said that I don't know. She then wrote something in her notebook with a quill pen. Are you saying that it is slander? Lady Belliard lowered her head a bit and looked at me through her glasses. I still had the chills from receiving her extremely effective attack of married women infidelity triangle. The story of how Prince Consort Werner of the Holy Kingdom has done everything he could to disgrace your name is quite well known even in the Empire, Your Highness. Do you perhaps see these scandals as part of the Prince Consort's scheme? My eyes opened wide at that moment. My mind became extremely cool. I was as if I poured some mint chocolate in there. There was some logic in her words. Werner Venetian, the Prince Consort of the Venetian Holy Kingdom and Queen Christiane's husband. Not only did this guy crown Princess Elise's position in order to protect the child between the Queen and him, he sent the bastard child Jesse Venetian to the Empire as a diplomatic hostage. He even tried to assassinate me. Elise had the proper rights as the firstborn and as the legitimate daughter, but he was wary of Prince Jesse because he was so popular. It made sense for that guy to spread all sorts of salacious rumors to dirty the prince's name. It also made sense why Yunce would feel so much pity for Prince Jesse. He had to deal with so much contempt and so many salacious rumors without ever doing anything wrong. He ended up falling in love with Christelle but could not get her heart. In the end, he died for her. His Royal Highness truly cares about the future of the Holy Kingdom. How could I know the thoughts deep inside his heart? I opened my mouth after a long time. My voice naturally went lower at the disturbing situation, but Lady Belliard seemed to think that it was because I was telling the truth. The future of the Holy Kingdom. It sounds like you are saying that the Prince Consort dragged you down for Crown Princess Elise, Your Highness. His Highness has already responded. Please move on to the next question. Gonal responded on my behalf. I smiled gently and looked up at the young boy. Gonal looked a bit angry but did his best to control his expression after sensing my gaze. He's such a good kid. Then may I ask something a bit sensitive? Lady Belliard placed her glasses on the table as she asked. I managed to get a peek into her notebook, which was full of writing now. The questions until now have been quite sensitive as well. She laughed out loud at my comment. I smiled without backing down. This was a fight in which I will win at the end. This conversation would seem difficult for anybody who was listening, but I had received some new information because of the questions and answers just now. I was too anxious at first to remember that she was known as the Holy Kingdom expert. I would be able to pull out a lot of information from Sarah Belliard if I use this interview properly. I had nothing to lose since I was ignorant of the workings of this world. It is a political question this time. It sounds interesting. Your Highness, the reason that you came here as a diplomatic hostage is because the Holy Kingdom went against the armistice and invaded our northern border. Yes, ma'am. There is a rumor that the conflict was from Crown Princess Elise acting on her own. Cedric came out of the Empress's office and stopped walking. He turned his head and looked down the hallway. He could clearly feel the flow of ether that was as wide as the southern fields and as gentle as the spring breeze. He had experienced the ether of Cardinal Aurélie Boutier and many other priests, but there was only one person whose ether gave off this kind of sensation. I guess the prince's schedule has not finished. That is correct, Your Royal Highness. His attendant David responded. The Imperial Prince quietly looked down at his left hand and clenched and unclenched his fist a few times. His body condition was not bad today. No, his condition had always been decent since Prince Jesse had entered the palace. He only turned into a little kid when he used too much power. However, it was wise to completely fill the canteen if there was a well nearby. It was wise to do that even if there was a small crack in that canteen. Let's rest for a bit before we go. The room next to the reception room is empty. It is the room Prince Jesse used to prepare this morning. The sharp David offered him the best suggestion. The Imperial Prince nodded his head and started walking. Although it wasn't as good as directly receiving the prince's ether, just being around the guy calmed the fires inside his body. The junky ether in the temple confessional could not compare to it at all. The Imperial Prince and his attendant quickly arrived at the room next to the reception room. David was thinking about making coffee for the Imperial Prince as he gently opened the door. However, someone was already inside. Young Lady Sarnez, your loyal subject greets our Royal Highness again. Christelle de Sarnez, who had her desirable pink hair in a high bun, got up and elegantly greeted the Imperial Prince. The Imperial Prince instantly felt frustration building up inside him. He knew that she had visited the Empress Palace as a guest today but had not expected her to still be here. He had the petty thought of wanting to leave the room. David, coffee. Yes, Your Royal Highness. What would you like, young Lady Sarnez? Ah, could I please have an iced coffee that is not too strong? Thank you very much. Her water attribute always got on the Imperial Prince's nerves. His senses would be on alert and an instinctual displeasure overwhelmed him whenever they were in the same place, especially if it was indoors. Although he didn't know for sure, she should also be feeling a similar displeasure at his fire attribute ether. The view from this room is great. Christelle boldly tried to start a conversation while looking at David leave. The two of them made eye contact. Her eyes were as cold as ice. They truly were as incompatible as he had thought. TWSB. Chapter 37. The Scoundrel of the Holy Kingdom. 3. The attendant, David Capucin, had a disloyal thought for a moment. He wanted to leave his master and get out of here right away. He was the person who had been supporting the Imperial Prince for the longest time, and, as the chief attendant of Romero Palace, had the ability to maintain his calm and handle any and all situations. However, even he had never faced something like this before. Imperial Prince Cedric seemed to find it uncomfortable to be around young Lady Christelle de Sarnez, but he could not figure out why. The problem was that the young lady seemed to find the Imperial Prince to be extremely unpleasant as well. A suffocating air brushed past in the room next to the reception room. "Here is your coffee, Your Royal Highness, and yours, young Lady Sarnez." "Thank you very much." Young Lady Sarnez thanked the attendant respectfully. The Imperial Prince thanked him with a gaze. It was back to silence after that. David debated whether he should step out and leave the two of them alone. The only thing he could think of being responsible for this bad relationship between the two of them was the breaking of the engagement. However, it wasn't like they were going to be married because they had feelings for each other. He had heard that things with the House of Sarnez were resolved pretty well. They even danced together at the spring ball when they first met. Of course, the Imperial Prince was skilled in acting as a member of the Imperial family, but... Clack! He could hear the ice moving inside young Lady Sarnez's coffee cup. David snapped out of his thoughts and looked toward his master out of habit. The Imperial Prince's face was even stiffer. "David." "Yes, Your Royal Highness." "Go rest." He was being asked to leave. He thought about how the two of them had turned the interior training ground into a mess, but this was the Empress Palace. Furthermore, Lady Sarah Belliard was in the reception room right next to this one. There was no way that they would cause such an issue. The attendant bowed respectfully before stepping away. The room became suffocatingly calm again. Christelle de Sarnez, well, the soul of Hamga inside her, barely managed to stop herself from scowling. The art of keeping a poker face that she had learned from her 31 years of life and crafted in her long time in the workforce, was quite useful here as well. She did not like the man sitting across from her, but she maintained a smile on her face. Everybody she met after the transmigration was a first meeting and a new person to her, but it was the first time she did not like someone for no reason like this. Who? Christelle quietly took a breath. She did her best not to think about the Imperial Prince. The reason she did not immediately return to the Sarnez residence in the Imperial capital after saying goodbye to Prince Jesse was not to have this unnecessary mental battle with this man. She could clearly feel the ether of the prince in the next room even without focusing very hard. As someone who has not been officially ordained as a holy knight yet, the only time for her to use her ability was during the lessons. She had never experienced what it felt like to be lacking ether. As a result, this was closer to a form of aromatherapy. The vocal equivalent would be ASMR. Being exposed to the prince's ether calmed her heart and made her feel as if the waves inside her settled down. The other priests she had met had extremely precise ether control, and their ether was not this pure. It was more like the Imperial Prince's. Wait a minute. The Imperial Prince. Did you want something? Imperial Prince Cedric looked disgruntled as she looked at him with her large eyes. He did not openly frown at her, but there was no goodwill whatsoever visible on his pretty face. The cause of her discomfort started to reveal a faint outline. Christelle oddly felt a sense of victory as she started speaking. "You are not a priest, Your Royal Highness. But it feels as if you have ether." Cedric Riester was silent at this sharp deduction. There had been no holy knights in the Empire until now. That meant that there had been nobody who could sense his fire attribute ether. Even healing priests had to open a special circle and release their ether to confirm his condition. However, Christelle de Sarnez was different. As expected, this woman was reacting sensitively to his fire. This was going to be annoying. The collision of forces at the border was Crown Princess Elise acting on her own. "I have 100 birds feeding me information, Your Highness." Lady Belliard smiled brightly and said that random phrase after hearing my question. I took a sip of the dried lime tea that an attendant had brought for me, and tried to control my facial expressions. The sweet taste made me feel as if I could focus a bit again. About 20 of them told me that was the case. They said that Prince Consort Werner had nothing to do with that incident, and that the Crown Princess was solely responsible. Even if what you said is true and the incident was solely caused by Crown Princess Elise, it does not change anything. That was my response. It was the truth. Even if the Prince Consort did not order her to do it, I was here because the Crown Princess went against the agreement. It just meant that the father and daughter acted with the same goal in mind. Who cares if they didn't seem to work together for a single incident? I guess so, Your Highness. But 5 of my birds, they said something different. No, it may have been 6 birds. She mumbled about how numbers became sort of blurry as she grew older before lowering her voice. I could barely hear what she said next. They say that the crown princess does not agree with what the prince consort is trying to do. You are saying some dangerous things. I felt chills down my back, but made sure to still respond calmly. This was new information as well. I'm sure it was just a rumor, but there was a difference between knowing that these rumors were out there and not knowing anything at all. Crown Princess Elise is 2 years older than Prince Jesse. I have no idea what kind of relationship the two of them had. However, I did not believe that the 3 siblings of the Holy Kingdom would have been close, as Yuns described Prince Jesse's family as if they were a ridiculous family in a Korean drama. They were probably only friendly on the outside, as half-siblings often do in the shows, with behind-the-scenes political battles occurring in the palace. At least that was how it was in the Chinese drama that my brother was watching. His Royal Highness, the Prince Consort, cherishes Princess Elise more than his own life. I said something that pretty much everybody knew about. But do you think that the Crown Princess feels the same way about the Prince Consort? Lady Sarah Belliard asked in a profound way. Her green eyes looked as if they could pierce through a person's soul. However, there was nothing she would be able to get from me. I do not know. I didn't know anything. I calmly said that before bringing the teacup to my lips. No, I tried to put the cup to my lip. Splash, the liquid in the teacup moved oddly. I was shocked but clenched my teeth not to say anything. You don't know about that either. Lady Belliard, it is probably best to stop asking about the political situation in the Holy Kingdom. It may impact the relationship between the two nations. Benjamin sternly interjected. Lady Belliard sounded shocked before she shrugged her shoulders. I was unable to take my eyes away from my teacup even at that moment. I was the only one who saw this, because Lady Belliard rejected a drink saying that she does not drink anything during an interview. What happened just now did not happen because my body or the ground shook. I was sure that the tea in my cup shot up before it fell back down. It was completely still now, as if nothing had happened, but it felt like something you would see in a movie. Clang! I heard the sound of glass breaking on the other side of the wall. I jerked my head up. Lady Belliard, who was flipping through her notebook, and Benjamin and Gonal, who were standing behind me, looked shocked at the unexpected noise as well. I guess they are not finished cleaning the next room. It sounds as if the attendants made a mistake. Benjamin calmly commented. I looked up at him with confusion. Gonal thankfully explained things for me. The next room is where you got ready this morning, Your Highness. This reception room and that room share a fireplace. I peeked toward the fireplace behind Lady Belliard. We seemed to be able to hear the other side, because the fireplace was open and therefore connected the 2 rooms together. It made sense now because I didn't think that the walls of the Empress Palace would be thin enough to allow sound to travel through so easily. Weren't we much farther in the morning? I don't remember Her Majesty's office being so close. That's because we moved through the eastern staircase, Your Highness. It is much closer, and it seems different if you use the central staircase as we did just now. I thought that it was a completely different floor. Your Highness, Gonal looked at me with pity. Benjamin quietly sighed. I know I'm bad with directions, but this is an interesting story. Lady Belliard's eyes sparkled at my comment. I shut my mouth, but it was already too late. The prince who is known as the Moon of the Holy Kingdom is bad with directions. Or maybe directionally challenged is better. She put her glasses back on her face and started moving her quill pen. Damn it, this isn't what I wanted. I am pretty average with directions. I wanted to say that I had nothing to fear with the map app on, and that I could get around on my own with no problems. It felt so unfair that I could not say anything because I transmigrated into this body. It looked as if my weaknesses would be revealed in my attempt to get information out of her. Crackle. I saw the fire in the fireplace burn fiercely behind Lady Belliard at that moment. Gonal seemed to have witnessed it this time as well. The fire soon returned to normal, but I could not shake this odd feeling in my mind. Lady Belliard turned her body to look behind her after seeing the stiff expressions on our faces. Did you hear the story about the divine beast? I quickly threw her some bait. The managing editor of the less than bi-weekly Register Greater Than looked back at me with an amused gaze. When you say divine beast, are you talking about the animal that you took in instead of sending to the Duum March? Yes, ma'am. I know it made no sense, but I had a strong feeling that I could not let her find out about this possessed teacup or the suspicious fireplace. The Raister Imperial Palace was made with anti-magic stones in the walls and the floors to prevent magic from being used anywhere other than the training grounds. The temple was an exception as it was under the Pope's authority. Basically, it meant that what happened just now was not because of magic. His name is Demi. I let him play in the garden when I come to the Empress Palace. I started going off about things she didn't even ask me and succeeded in keeping her gaze focused on me. I didn't care whether they poured oil or alcohol into the fireplace from the other room. However, there was a clear culprit for the tea giving me a show. And, based on what I knew, her abilities should not be revealed just yet. Why did she not go home yet? He sounds very cute. Yes, he is very cute. He's lately shown interest in the meat I eat. I pushed back against my jaw that was going stiff, and continued my chat with Lady Belliard. I ended up biting my tongue trying to get new information out of Lady Belliard while simultaneously not revealing much about my personal life and protecting Christelle de Sarnez's secret. I would probably only feel better if I told her she owes me a meal for helping her out, but I couldn't even say that, as it might make us get closer. Damn it. Friday with the fierce fireplace came to a close and it was already Monday. It was raining outside. Welcome, my little prince. It is my pleasure to be in your presence, your noble eminence, Madame Cardinal. 11 a.m. I received Cardinal Boutier's warm welcome as I entered her office. 2 guests who had arrived before me were seated on the couch. One bastard said nothing as he looked at me, while the other stood up and respectfully greeted me. Hello, Prince Jesse. Hello, young Lady Sarnez. Hello, Your Royal Highness. Unlike Christelle, who was acting like an adult, Imperial Prince Cedric looked quite upset. It was at least good that he wasn't trying to provoke me as usual. My godson's condition is bad because of the rain. Because of the rain. Does this punk have spring fever? I did my best to maintain my poker face as I sat down far away from the 2 main characters. It was good news to hear that the main character of a rom fan was struggling with spring fever. Use that heat to light up your romantic life and start dating her already. I'm sure he's even more upset because he's been placed on probation. Your Eminence. The Cardinal quietly chuckled after hearing the Imperial Prince's stiff voice. I blinked a few times after hearing that word for the first time since coming to this world. The Imperial Prince is on probation. Why? I also received probation. Christelle leaned in close to the table and whispered. Her smiling face was so pretty yet so ominous. How did the 2 of you cause an incident? The Imperial Prince scowled at my question. The main character's clear laughter echoed through the room. TWSB. Chapter 38. Churning 1, yes, they caused a large incident. Frederick is extremely angry. Cardinal Boutier responded to me instead of the involved parties. I then noticed that she seemed a bit upset as well. I looked directly at Christelle because I already had an idea as to what might have happened. Young Lady Sarnez was in the next room when I was interviewing with Lady Sarah Belliard. Did she? His Royal Highness was there as well. Christelle sounded as if she was recalling a pleasant moment. She did not show any signs of remorse or apology. I turned toward the damn Imperial Prince in disbelief. His orange eyes looked as if they wanted to set me on fire. Why is he acting as if he didn't do anything wrong? Basically, the 2 of them were not satisfied with the chaos they caused in the interior training ground last time, and had a lover's quarrel in the Empress Palace as well. I know that Christelle has awakened as a holy knight, but I couldn't help but feel that this MC couple might be too violent. It made me worry about what the youngsters reading this would learn from them. Emotions getting out of hand is one thing, but he chucked things around with his mother in a nearby room. As for Christelle, she even resorted to using ether. The 2 of you were definitely in the wrong this time. You should get along with each other. I sternly responded. The Imperial Prince quietly clicked his tongue. Christelle had a complicated look on her face. I rattled off like crazy to Lady Belliard about Demi, food that Demi eats because I was scared that she would find out about what was going on next door. I was relieved that I did that. I didn't even want to imagine how the article would have sounded or how the romance would have worked again if she found out that the Imperial Prince and a young noble lady were fighting in the Empress's palace. Can't the 2 of you just date normally? Prince Jesse is right. Christelle is only 19, so it is more understandable that she could not control her emotions. But you're 25 in August, Cedric. 19. I gasped at the MC's age and peeked toward Christelle. It made sense logically, but I had not thought that hard about their ages before. 19 meant that she was the same age as Yunce. Even if the soul that transmigrated into her was an office worker around my age, it was impossible to consider someone who looked so young as a potential romantic partner. Of course, I had no desire whatsoever to date her, so it didn't matter. Cedric cannot partake in any political affairs for 1 week. Christelle is not allowed to receive lessons as a novice Holy Knight either. The Cardinal explained to me. The Imperial Prince glared into the air with extreme discontent visible in his eyes. He seemed to have dealt with some of the Empire's affairs already, despite not being the Imperial Crown Prince yet. So he's 24 right now. This little punk, whose name on the family tree isn't even dry yet, dares to speak informally to a 4 years older big bro like me. That's not all. The Cardinal's beige-colored eyes sparkled dangerously under her monocle. They broke stuff inside the Empress Palace and increased the workload for the attendants, so their punishment is to clean the underground portal. Nobody is allowed to help them. Esteemed godmother. Ah, the Imperial Prince's voice was so low he sounded gloomy. Christelle just gasped. I didn't know where the underground portal was located nor what it looked like, but making them clean made them seem like high school students. I couldn't help but chuckle while looking at the two of them openly showing their dislike of the situation. I guess you can be their supervisor. Excuse me. The smile instantly disappeared from my face. I got the chills from this unexpected attack. Why do I? We need someone to keep an eye on them so that they don't fight again. Wouldn't it be better if it was someone who knows both of them well? It is also highly likely that they will not listen to a person who doesn't have much authority. She then added on about how everybody is busy with their tasks. It was her way of putting it nicely, but she still meant that a slacker like me should go take care of the kids. However, I had a card up my sleeve to use for such a moment. I need to go receive confessions, Your Eminence. These two children have wronged the Empress of the Empire. Please watch them cleanse their sins. That was beyond the limits of this card up my sleeve. I became upset. These idiots should have gone far away from home to fight with each other. Why did they have to fight here at home and create flames that affect me as well when I did nothing? I did my best to make sure I didn't grumble and looked up as I made eye contact with Christelle's blue-gray eyes. I couldn't help but grind my teeth after seeing the joy in her eyes. I then turned to look at the Imperial Prince, who was sitting about 3 meters away from Christelle. I watched him ignore my gaze and cover his mouth with his gloved hand. Hey, you little, since the moon of the Holy Kingdom will suffer on our behalf, the Empress Palace will provide lunch. A full-course meal for as many people as you want. I will properly fulfill the role. I responded to her. Damn it. I might as well work my butt off and bring Gonal, Benjamin, and Demi to stuff our faces since things are like this. Imperial Prince Cedric, Christelle, and I were kicked out of the Cardinal's office. She must have discussed it beforehand, as there were 10 Imperial Guard members stationed outside the door. They respectfully greeted us before escorting us. I briefly explained the situation to Benjamin and Gonal before telling them to get ready to eat until their stomachs blow up later. I didn't know that there was a portal in the Empress Palace. My voice echoed in the staircase down to the basement. We were now moving to the darkest parts of the Empress Palace. A few Imperial Guard members quickly lit torches as we went down. It has never been used since the war. The Imperial Prince responded in a low voice even though I wasn't expecting an answer. I thought about the history of the Empire that I had read until now and nodded my head. It makes sense that they would close the portal after something like that. However, it was extremely confident of them to put a portal in the palace where the Empress resides. Step, step, click, click. I could only hear footsteps again. The Imperial Guard members were walking like robots who only looked forward while Christelle and the Imperial Prince did not say anything. It was surprising, since I had expected them to argue. I looked up at the Imperial Prince, who was standing next to me, before turning to look at Christelle, who was following one step behind us. Are they really not arguing because I am here? You sure are quiet, Your Royal Highness. Do you want us to fight? No. I hope that the two of you get along very well, Your Royal Highness. The Imperial Prince slightly frowned at my response. Christelle didn't seem happy either. I couldn't tell what the problem was with them. I heard that they acted like bitter enemies until they fell in love in the original as well, but the rift between them seems to be worse because Christelle gained power. We are getting along very well. Christelle suddenly said that as we continued to move down. Jackpot. That is good to hear. I learned one of His Royal Highness's secrets as well. A couple Imperial Guard members became anxious and almost stumbled. On the other hand, my face lit up. That's really great. Great. The Imperial Prince immediately asked in a sharp tone. This young punk was so full of murderous intent. Wait, don't you usually get closer to someone by having secrets between the two of you? Am I not even allowed to speak now? It's good to have a friend you can reveal your secrets to, Your Royal Highness. We are here. This way, Your Royal Highness. The Imperial Prince looked ready to verbally attack me, but an Imperial Guard member reported to us first. We all looked up at the large stone door that covered our view. Unlike the above-ground floors that were made of Carrara marble walls that were well decorated, the basement resembled a dungeon in a video game. It was dark and eerie with high ceilings and cold air. However, I still did not see any rats or bugs, probably because this was still inside the Imperial Palace. We will open the door now. The Imperial Prince nodded his head and the Imperial Guard members gathered together to push the stone door open. Rumble. The door smoothly moved out of the way without much resistance. It did not seem to be locked. Everything was amazing, as I had never been to a place like this after transmigrating to this world. Even Yunce might have never read about this. I could soon see the large area on the other side. Cough, 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 cough. Achoo. The Imperial Guard members who went in first to light torches and make sure it was safe waved their hands around while coughing and sneezing. I could even see someone crying and sniffling with a stuffy nose. Christelle and I followed behind the Imperial Prince, who walked forward with large strides. How long will it take to clean all of this? I mumbled to myself. The hallway had been eerie, yet clean, but this room with the portal seemed as if nobody had been here for a long time. Spiderwebs were drooping down from the ceiling everywhere and the floor was so dusty I couldn't figure out its original color. I guess the Empress really was angry. The two of them should probably feel relieved that they were not exiled or thrown into prison for doing something like that in the Empress Palace. I wonder what Duke Sarnez and Lady Sarnez are thinking right now. Brooms and bins of water have been prepared over here. There are rags as well. Your Royal Highness, if it is too difficult, we can help out. Should we first prepare an area to sit down? The Imperial Guard members, who looked like pros at maintaining their poker faces until now, seemed to have found themselves in an awkward position to leave us after seeing the place. Of course, they had already told us that they would just be standing guard outside and not actually leaving us here alone. However, they seemed to struggle with leaving the person who would eventually become the emperor, the prince of a neighboring nation, and the young lady of a respected noble family to complete such a dirty task. That is okay. Please go and take care of any business you need to attend to. I stepped up and calmed them down. The Imperial Prince was simply standing there like a sculpture with his sculpture-like face and Christelle has been messing around since earlier, so I was the only one who could take care of this. Prince Jesse, but, these two have significantly wronged Her Majesty and are here for punishment. Are you trying to cover for them? Absolutely not, Your Highness. The Imperial Guard members shouted back. They seemed to finally snap out of it. Good, so it is okay for you all to go. Please don't worry. I will keep an eye on them. I smiled and sent them out the door. The Imperial Guard members hesitated and looked as if they wanted to resist, but moved their feet. I waved at them and slowly turned around. Will the two of you be able to take care of all of this? I don't see why not. The Imperial Prince retorted back. His mentality to make even the impossible happen is very good. I, as your supervisor, do not wish for a lot from the two of you. I will do it alone. Christelle interjected. I was a bit shocked and looked down toward her. Our dear MC opened up her palm and a water drop the size of a basketball splashed into existence. Wow, I was wondering what she was thinking. She said to not get help. She never said not to use our abilities. She smiled like a mischievous child. I couldn't help but scoff. Asterisk splash, splash, sha. A wave that reached the ceiling swirled through the circular room and slammed into the wall as it moved. There were strands of water thinner than most pinky fingers sweeping along the floor like snakes. The dirty water flowed into the sewer outside the door. This continued for about 20 minutes. I stood on the right side of the door and shouted in a loud voice. Are you okay, young Lady Sarnes? Yes, I am not dizzy yet, Your Highness. I heard Christelle's energetic voice from inside the room. I read that holy knights really like to use their divine power. The part about them feeling freedom and serenity from releasing their unique ether seemed to be true. I looked toward the Imperial Prince who was leaning on the left side of the door. He looked serious even from the side and it made me think of something. I said something before I could even think about it. It will be okay, Your Royal Highness. He seemed to not understand what I meant. I let out a fake cough. I'm talking about Sadie. The Imperial Prince's eyes opened wide. What are you? You can come in now. Christelle shouted from the inside. The dirty water on the floor was gone without a trace. I peeked inside to see that the room was now completely different from the room we saw 30 minutes ago. TWSB. Chapter 39. Churning 2. Wow, it's so pretty, isn't it? The only thing coming out of my mouth was gasps of admiration. Christelle smiled brightly and turned toward me. I blankly nodded my head at her question. This basement room, that didn't have a single ray of sun coming into it, was shining brightly. It looked as if the walls were chiseled down to create this place. Is it white gold? It doesn't seem like it, I mumbled and slowly walked around the room. The floor, walls, and ceiling of the round room were all made of the same metal. White and blue lights were coming off of the now spotless room and reflecting on the other side. I could faintly see the reflections of Imperial Prince Cedric, Christelle, and I on the ground. It also seemed like the background of a sci-fi movie. Oh no, I'm getting dizzy. Christelle finally stumbled. I quickly walked up and grabbed her arm to support her. She had created a lot of water in many different shapes and forms, so she should have used a lot more ether than when she sparred against the Imperial Prince or took down those toxin bowls. Please stay inside my circle. Thank you very much. Christelle smiled at me. I let go of her arm and calmly released my holy domain. The circular golden light that surrounded the three of us mixed together with the white and blue lights of the area and gave off a mysterious glow like never seen before. Color started to return to Christelle's pale face as I released my ether into the circle. The Imperial Prince just silently watched. This must be the portal. Christelle quietly absorbed ether for a bit before pointing toward the center of the floor. I turned my head to look at where she was pointing. There seemed to be something like a large circle at the center of the room. However, the shape was not the same as an ether circle. It looked like two squares overlapping each other at an angle. I went up to take a closer look and I was able to see that someone had meticulously dug the shape out of the ground itself. It's extremely elegant. I heard that ether circles and magic formations are completely different. I guess it is true. Christelle and I took turns admiring the complicated formation. The symbols of my holy domain looked like a 4-year-old's chicken scratches compared to this. However, the magic formation was not complete. There was a giant slash down the middle, as if someone had struck down with a spear or axe. This must be why they say that the portal is closed. The Imperial Prince nodded his head once at my comment. The portal had become unusable after a portion of the magic formation was destroyed a long time ago. 99% of the portal was made up of text and images that I could not decipher, but there was a part that did catch my eye. For my beloved Juliet. I read it out loud. Juliet. Isn't that the name of the palace you reside in, Your Highness? Christelle commented. I nodded my head. I thought about a story that Benjamin told me at tea time about a month ago. It was written about multiple times in the history books as well. The current Empress Frederick's grandfather, the late Emperor Romero, was engaged to be wed to a woman named Juliet. She was a noble priestess from the Venetian Holy Kingdom as marriage between the two nations was possible as there were no issues between Riester and Venetian at that time. Juliet quite enjoyed her name pronounced in the Riester style, Juliet, and the late Emperor Romero had 2 buildings built in the Imperial Palace for his beloved. Those buildings were the Romero Palace and Juliet Palace. The reason Romero Palace was located in front of Juliet Palace was supposedly the late emperor showing his will to be her shield forever. However, Juliet is someone who betrayed His Majesty, the late Emperor Romero. That is the reason Juliet Palace is often called the Cold Palace. I explained it to Christelle. Christelle slightly tilted her head and started speaking. I'm going to have to nag my private tutor for information when I go home. I lost a lot of my memories after being ill for so long. I chuckled and nodded my head. Christelle probably had no time to study history as she had enough issues adjusting to this life after transmigrating into her new body. I had a ton of time, since I was a diplomatic hostage who was left alone and felt pressured to gather information by the time constraint of my eventual death as the second male lead, but it was different for her. Anyways, it was understandable that the portal was in the Empress Palace if it was made for none other than Juliet. Late Emperor Romero probably wanted it so that she could easily come to him whenever she wanted. Of course, he ended up facing the Holy Kingdom's Holy Knights on the other side of the portal. It might even have been Romero himself who destroyed the magic formation like this. Then will nothing happen even if we channel mana into this? I turned toward the Imperial Prince and asked. He answered yes as if it was obvious. I do want to see it once. Christelle, who seemed to have the same thought as me, commented out loud. I slowly peeked toward the Imperial Prince. Christelle was openly looking towards him. The young man's orange eyes scowled. What is it? I'm curious to see how it looks when it is lit up. It doesn't work so it won't matter, right? I commented and Christelle quickly followed up with an excuse as well. Unlike the two of us, he was a mage and a swordsman. He could easily infuse mana into the broken magic formation if he wanted to do so. It was safe since the portal had no chance of taking us anywhere, and this was our chance to properly witness a historical site that was developed during the Warring Era. It was normal that we would be curious. I cleaned up on my own so this much is just service, don't you think so, Your Royal Highness? Christelle asked in her uniquely sharp tone. Her voice felt the same way it did when she asked me for an ether sample last time. The Imperial Prince was silent for a moment before he let out a deep breath through his nose. He then stretched his left hand out toward the magic formation. I quickly deactivated my holy domain since Christelle's condition seemed to have stabilized. I wanted to see the full magic formation when it is not covered by my circle. Red aura started flowing out of the tip of the Imperial Prince's black glove. This was mana, the source of magic. I had seen him use magic to control metal, but this was my first time seeing him channel pure mana. The mana gently descended to the ground like spreading paint before it spread out like fog and enveloped the magic formation. Christelle and I watched without making any noise. An odd noise came out of the magic formation. It truly resembled the type of noise that would come from a sci-fi movie. The foggy red mana quickly turned into liquid before it pushed forward through the elaborately sculpted magic formation. The empty grooves were rapidly filling with red ink. Once the portal was full without any empty areas, the ground shook as it released a blood-red light. The sharp light of metal looked scary. This is crazy, my jaws dropped on their own. Christelle showed an intense response as well. I agreed with her statement as I looked down at my feet. The magic formation was splendid and detailed. The portal did not move at all because of the large slash in the middle, but my stomach was churning. It was as if I got in a car with an extremely strong air freshener. I gagged. I quickly covered my mouth with my hand. What is going on? Are you okay, Your Highness? A shocked Christelle was inspecting my face. The Imperial Prince seemed to be shocked as well, as he stopped the mana flowing out of his hand. I felt the color leaving my face as I stumbled. I just don't feel very. My legs gave out. I felt my forehead go cold while my body was covered in cold sweat. I then fell over. The damn Imperial Prince grabbed me by the collar. Hey you crazy bastard, I can't breathe. Looks like you're still out of it. Please let go of him, Your Royal Highness. Christelle raised her voice. I quickly stood up straight and took a deep breath as soon as the Imperial Prince released me. Huff. My eyes focused again but my stomach was still churning. It was a completely different feeling to ether depletion. No, this really feels like, I feel nausea. I did my best to stop myself from throwing up and groaned. I frowned as my mouth started tasting sour. The red light on the ground instantly disappeared. The room returned to its refined blue and white color as if nothing had ever happened. I don't know whether it was the red color making me anxious or what, but my heart seemed to calm down a bit once the magic formation was turned off. I slowly raised my head. I could see orange eyes looking down at me. The Imperial Prince must have stopped his mana. Do you have portal nausea? Excuse me. His low voice echoed in my ear. I was confused despite hearing him properly. Portal what? It's an issue of mana sensitivity. Go see the Imperial Doctor. Wait a minute, what kind of nausea is that? I barely gulped down the saliva under my tongue as I asked. My insides were feeling much better, but I was still a bit dizzy, similar to the sequelae from being carsick. Christelle supported me as I staggered. The Imperial Prince bastard used his long legs and was already exiting the room. Wait, who gets motion sickness from using a port? Furthermore, the magic formation had not even activated. Christelle quietly answered as I mumbled to myself. Your Highness. It is portal nausea. Ha, it is something that happens to people with extremely low mana sensitivity. Their bodies cannot handle the mana inside the portal's magic formation. The Imperial Doctor calmly explained to me. I leaned against the headrest of the bed with Demi on my tummy as I listened. Benjamin and Gonal were standing next to me looking extremely concerned. Cardinal Boutier and someone I had never met before were standing next to the Imperial Doctor. As for the full-course lunch, I didn't get to have it. That damn Imperial Prince snitched to the Cardinal that I got motion sickness at the underground portal and I was forced to settle for 2 bowls of consommé. Yunce was right. It's all that bastard's fault no matter what. Everybody is born with some level of mana sensitivity even if they are not mages. They are able to at least tell whether or not the animals around them are regular animals or demonic beasts. However, there are people every so often who can only tell that the animal is a demonic beast once they come close and use their mana. The doctor stabbed some more figurative daggers into my chest. I recalled that I only knew that the toxin bulls in the rear mountain behind Juliet Palace were demonic beasts after confirming their abilities. I was that person who would need a taste in order to tell shit from soybean paste. Damn it, people who were born with such low mana sensitivity are unable to use portals through normal means. The Imperial Doctor made a heavy statement. I quietly sighed. I thought that I got lucky having a lot of ether when I transmigrated into this body, but I guess I had no talent whatsoever in regards to magic. My stats were all in toward a priest. I am concerned that you will have to use a carriage to go to the great clearance of demonic beasts if you are not able to use portals. I heard that the road there is rough. Cardinal Boutier listened seriously before commenting. Her beige eyes were full of concern. I was concerned about that as well. Usually, a diplomatic hostage would not need to use a portal outside of the Imperial Palace, but I needed to head toward the Duum March next month. It is probably best to take carriages and rest at different places as we slowly travel. I gave my suggestion. Using carriages would make our trip longer and cost more, but I did not have the courage to try using a portal again. Just thinking about that red light makes my stomach churn and gives me an ominous feeling. It would be 100 times better to slowly take in the scenery of the Empire as we traveled. Not at all. Please leave it to me, Prince Jesse. The unfamiliar man who had been quiet until now spoke for the first time. I looked at the feeble person standing to the Cardinal's right. His black skin and light pink eyes made him look memorable and handsome. He gave off a completely different vibe from his younger brother, Captain Duum. Do you have a better idea, Marquis Duum? I asked and he smiled before opening his bag. I could hear the Cardinal sighing. Marquis Francois Duum was a mage who specialized in teleportation. I heard that he was investing a lot of money to research portals and create inventions based on his specialty. The Cardinal had called over the Marquis, who happened to be in the imperial capital, after hearing that I was diagnosed with portal nausea. Of course, she looked as if she was regretting that decision a bit right now. It is this right here. The Marquis made some dramatic movements as he raised his arm in the air. There were flat, round and mysterious apricot-colored pieces of cloth in his hand. Your portal nausea will disappear like magic if you put it under your ear. Hey dude, that's trademark infringement. TWSB, Chapter 40. Churning 3. Marquis Francois Duum stood a large trunk next to him and started speaking with the piece of cloth in one hand. The Imperial Doctor slowly packed up as the Marquis's one-man show started. I've seen something like this quite often down in the subway. There is an extremely unique glue on the back of this cloth. Shall I give you a hint since you seem curious? You simply need to think about demonic beasts and animal hide gelatin together. Hoo. If you stick this part under your ear, the mana in the animal hide gelatin and the cloth fuse to create a unique reaction. I personally participated in the research. He had a lot to say, and seemed to be every bit the attention seeker that I heard he was. His every gesture was large and swift. It was to the point that it would seem loud even if he stopped talking and only continued with his movements. Cardinal Boutier was not even hiding the fact that she was ignoring what the Marquis was saying as she took the Kimi no, the portal motion sickness medicine from his hand. TL, the Korean motion sickness patch is called Kimet. Ah. You are interested in it as I expected, Your Eminence. Francois, could you quiet down? The little prince is a patient. She sounded annoyed. It was interesting because I had never seen the cardinal treat anybody like this. However, Marquis Duham didn't seem dispirited at all. Of course, I was extremely rude. However, please don't worry as he will brush it off and get back up soon enough, Your Eminence. Here are some more, Prince Jesse. He smiled elegantly and started rummaging through his other bag. I thought that he seemed quite carefree for a marquis, but decided that I should be thankful since he came over after hearing about my poor condition. Being smart and having a lot of interest in the welfare of his residents should mean that he was a pretty decent person of power. His words and actions might seem extremely light and carefree, but he had a handsome face and a lot of money, so the pros probably outweigh the cons. Here you go, please take some. The Marquis limped over and handed me some of the motion sickness medicine. I suddenly realized that I had not noticed his condition because I had been listening to the imperial doctor. How did you hurt your leg? I asked with curiosity. The Marquis made some dramatic movements, as if he had been waiting for me to ask, and touched his splinted left leg. His light pink eyes shook a bit. I felt as if I was watching a play. Our beloved Majesty handed down some vicious worldly pain on the Almighty God's behalf. She must have beaten him up. I heard that you were putting the divine item in your territory, the Sword of Wisdom from the Flaming Star, as the prize for the great clearance of demonic beasts. I asked about it. The Sword of Wisdom was probably the reason for the Empress to call him over and beat him up. The Cardinal had cancelled my lesson to deal with what the Marquis had done, while the Empress made a deal with Lady Sarah Belliard and allowed her to interview me. I was shocked that the Empress was violent toward someone, especially a Marquis at that, but it was not that shocking considering what I had seen from Empress Frederick regarding her personality until now. Yes, Your Highness. It was a decision that came from my family's loyalty. However, anger was clearly visible on Her Majesty's face and, you should feel lucky that you still have your leg. The Cardinal sharply cut him off. I heard the Marquis quietly sniffling. I couldn't help but laugh because it was like watching a skit. I heard that Marquis Duham was one of the Empress's close confidants, and in some sense, they truly seemed like family. Anyway, thank you very much for the motion sickness medicine. I controlled my laughter and received the medicine from him. He elegantly bowed with extremely dramatic movements. I guess he's skinny because he moves so much that it counts as exercise. Then you must have used carriages the whole way on your way from the Holy Kingdom. That must have been difficult. The Cardinal looked at me while speaking in a pitying voice. I stiffened a bit at this unexpected statement. It made sense now that I thought about it. Prince Jesse would not have been able to use portals with this body, despite portals being used a lot in the Venetian Holy Kingdom as well. If he did use them, he would have crossed the border half unconscious. Well, it's all in the past. I just mumbled something that came to mind. I could see the compassion in her beige-colored eyes. I guess I earned some sympathy without even aiming for it. You should be able to try using a portal again if the medicine works as it should. She quietly commented. I could only blankly nod my head. I couldn't complain that I didn't want to use a portal when they were telling me there was a medicine that could help me deal with my motion sickness. It was obvious that leaving the house would lead to all sorts of difficulties no matter how I go about it. I decided to make the most of it, since this trip should be the first and last trip I make. Squee Demi, who woke up from his nap, quietly squealed on top of my stomach. I petted his warm head as I thought about the date. The great clearance of demonic beasts was on May 8 and it was currently April 27. It could take up to 4 days to get to the Duum March from the imperial capital by horse. It would obviously take longer than 4 days if the medicine didn't work and we needed to take carriages. We don't have much time. Prince Jesse, my family and the Duum March will welcome you from the bottom of our hearts whenever you visit. The Marquis opened up like a peacock as he said that. I awkwardly smiled. It was extremely peaceful for the next 3 days. What I mean is that I did not see Christelle or Imperial Prince Cedric for 3 days. It felt so good. Where should I put the clothes for the party? Put them in that bag over there in the corner. Organize the shoes later because we are supposed to get a new pair in the afternoon. Yes, Benjamin Nim. Benjamin Nim, there are 3 miters. Gonal Nim, we need to prepare His Highness's snacks separately at dawn. Numerous people were going in and out of my room, the hallway and the palace since early in the morning. It was more than just Benjamin and Gonal. All the attendants and royal servants in Juliet Palace were involved, making it quite chaotic. It was because I was leaving for the Duum March tomorrow. Benjamin told me that I would be helping by sitting quietly, so I sat on a comfortable chair and was trying my best to be invisible. Some of the attendants glared at me when I tried to fold some pajamas and pack them. I can't tell who the boss is. Demi, come here. Prue. I called the red panda who was rolling on top of the carpet over to me and sat him on my knees while writing with a quill pen on a fancy piece of paper I got from an attendant. Screech. Shish, we need to be quiet since everybody is working. Demi was following my hand and waving his black front paw around as if he found the ink coming out of the pen whenever I moved it to be interesting. I couldn't draw the circle because I couldn't see the paper. I was trying to use this free time to study but this divine beast was being quite uncooperative. Knock knock knock. Hello, Prince Jesse. Someone knocked on the open door. It was a familiar voice. I raised my head and greeted her. Hello, Vice Captain Elizabeth. Vice Captain Elizabeth, who had a refreshing smile on her face as usual, walked into my room while linking arms with Gonal. Gonal's face was a bit red as he walked in with snacks. I've had this thought for a while but the two of them seem really close. Gonal, you take a break too. But, the young boy's complexion changed at my comment. He seemed to feel guilty for relaxing when everybody else was busy. You even brought 2 cups of juice to drink with me. Gonal's face flushed red as Vice Captain Elizabeth jokingly commented. Tea that. Gonal, you look like a tomato. Oh, the juice you brought is tomato juice too. The Vice Captain of the Imperial Guard and I took turns teasing him. The young boy looked as if he would cry. I thought that he might get upset if I teased him too much, so I stopped laughing and changed topics after having Gonal sit down. You must be busy as we are leaving tomorrow. I am working with joy because I am going to play. Traveling for work is the best, Your Highness. Vice Captain Elizabeth smiled brightly and raised her glass of tomato juice as if she was making a toast. I remembered how she had wanted to participate in the great clearance of demonic beasts this year. The Vice Captain finished her drink and got down to business as Gonal poured hot elderberry tea into my cup. Now then, please let me brief you on the schedule, Your Highness. We will use the portal closest to the Imperial Palace at 11 a.m. tomorrow to travel to the southern part of the Imperial capital. The portal is at the center of the Imperial capital in the Ligo district. I nodded my head and put a banana in Demi's mouth. I would peel it and hold it in my hand and Demi would grab my wrist and take a bite. It has been decided that only one portal will be used, so that will be the first and only portal. I understand. I responded to her. I had tested the motion sickness medicine quite a bit with the Imperial Doctor, Cardinal, and Marquis Duum in the last 4 days. I had ended up as the beta tester for a medicine that was not even out in the market. I felt as if they were getting good use out of me as a diplomatic hostage. I would stick the medicine underneath my ear and stand on top of the Empress Palace's underground portal. We concluded that I would be able to use a portal at least once a day without any problems. A second time proved to be quite difficult even while using the medicine. Then I guess you will be there in 4 days, Your Highness. Stick one on in the morning, use a portal, and get some rest. Stick another one the next morning, use a portal, and get some rest. You just have to repeat that process. Marquis Duham had shouted with joy like a mad scientist. There may be some side effects, so I do not recommend using it for the whole duration of the trip. The Imperial doctor said something extremely rational to put the brakes on that plan. Francois, there's no fun in smacking you, so control yourself. It is probably best to use the medicine on the first day and then take carriages from there on. Cardinal Boutier concluded things for us. Apparently portals were not simple movements from point A to point B, they worked similar to subways. It would be great if we could use the Ligo portal in the imperial capital to go directly to the Duham March, but we would need to go from Ligo to a different neighborhood's portal, then to another portal. It was also super expensive, so much so that commoners and poor nobles did not even think about using them. We expect it to take a minimum of 4 days from the southern part of the imperial capital to the Duham March. Things may change based on the weather or condition of the road. Got it. I was excited like it was the day before a field trip despite hearing that we would be traveling for 4 days. I had not thought much about it until yesterday. But seeing the people at Juliet Palace running around so early in the morning to pack made me excited and curious about the outside world. I had been to the basement of the Imperial Palace and on the rear mountain. I had been in many buildings and even had the temple fixed up as I pleased. However, I had remained inside the Imperial Palace the whole time. I didn't have any complaints about that, but I was sure that it was a positive thing to be able to see the bigger, UNW, world. You seem happy, Your Highness. Is it because it is your first outing? Vice Captain Elisabeth and Gonal smiled as they asked. I became embarrassed and quietly rubbed Demi's black tummy. Was it that obvious? There will be a total of 10 carriages. 8 of them will have attendants, guards, and cargo, 10 carriages. I almost blanked out. I thought that there would be 3 or 4 carriages, so it seemed like quite a lot. Aren't they spending too much money on a diplomatic hostage? Oh, are they paying closer attention because I am a diplomatic hostage? I don't plan on running away. Ha 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 ha. Vice Captain Elisabeth laughed out loud as I anxiously responded. I meant what I said. I had nowhere to go and it would be dangerous on my own. Why would I run away from this 5-star hotel? Survival was the most important thing for me. Please tell that to the little kid later. When you say little kid, I did not finish my sentence. Vice Captain Elisabeth's gray eyes curled up like a cat's eyes as she smiled. She was talking about Sadie. I peeked toward Gonal. The young boy was too distracted by Demi to hear our conversation. Please continue the briefing. I quickly changed topics. I didn't feel comfortable talking about Sadie when a lot of people were coming and going. Vice Captain Elisabeth chuckled at me before taking a map of the Empire out of her pocket. The start of May. A long row of carriages was visible between Juliet Palace and Romero Palace. Strong and beautiful horses were calmly waiting for departure. The large imperial crest on the side of the black carriage was so shiny that it could probably be seen from 500 meters away. Benjamin and Gonal got onto the 6th carriage that was designated for me. I was in the garden waiting for Demi, who had yet to return. I was planning to grab him as soon as he came out of the bushes as I stood there and opened my circle to release ether. Demi, come on out now. We need to go see your friends. I amplified my voice and said out loud. I couldn't help but smile while thinking about the red pandas that had gone to the march long before us. It was at that moment, click. The door to the 5th carriage, the one that was right in front of mine, opened. I turned toward the source of the noise out of reflex. How slow. I heard a deep voice that sounded like a voice actor reading a poem before I saw an all too familiar face. My holy domain extended out as I lost control. My insides were already churning even though there were no portals.